Frozen? What's up, man?
Bullshit, I can't hear you. Sound off like you got a pair.
Can you hear me now, Gumby? Rude. Good. I'm glad. Mr. I can't hear you. I was like, I hadn't even turned on the microphone yet. Am I any good at Arch? No. I've actually never tried Arch. I think I'm going to maybe try Omarchi, or how you say it, Omarchi, on an old MacBook that I've got. I think I'm going to give it a shot. Well, let's get started. What's up, everybody? I hope y'all are having a fantastic Wednesday. Boy, that's all funky. Let's see, that fixed it. I don't know. Something weird in the lighting. How y'all doing, guys? Man, pretty decent day today. Just went to the eye doctor. Get my eyes checked out. Found out I hadn't done it in like 2 years. So she yelled at me for a little bit. She's a very cute, short Asian lady who's very sweet, but also she's like, how come you haven't come to see me for 2 years? I'm like, it was an accident. Don't remember how to purge packages? Well, what tool did you use to install them? Because that typically has the one to purge it too. Oh, let's see. I have been neck deep in writing a blog post, so I haven't been keeping up with the news. So I'm just kind of perusing Last Week in Security real quick to see what's going on here. Let's see, was this part 1? Who is this from? Oh, this is from Watchtower. I love these guys. Hold on. What's the part 2 here? Let's see, when was this published? Let's see, that was September 25th. This one was September 24th. Okay, so they're both very recent. Cool, let's check that one out. Phantom extension, backdooring Chrome through uncharted pathways. Interesting. Yeah, let's take a look at that one too. I hadn't seen that. Let's see, VMware Privask, FIDO cross-device phishing. This attack only works if this works if God, I can't read. This works only if the attacker has placed devices in Bluetooth low energy range and within 150 meters near the victim. It's still interesting. Let's see. Bring your vulnerable driver to the next level. Exploiting the vulnerable drivers. Yeah, that's usually actually part of the bring your own vulnerable driver thing. Let's see. What about this one? Decom again. Installing trouble. Use the Windows installer custom action server to install a driver remotely for lateral movement. Ooh. What's this naming things is hard? Oh, it's a nice XKCD. Enter the host name for the system. You've been staring at that screen for a while. Picking good server names important. And yet you settled on Caroline for our daughter in like 15 seconds. But this is a server. Besides, I had YouTube. Were you trying to name her Epidural? Funny. Alright, let's take a look at the decom here. Hey Ernesto, what's up, brother? Let's see. What's this? It's mouse input random up for generating secret keys. Short answer, it depends on how many points you collect to enforce the minimum travel distance. If you're wondering, this probably has to do with, there was an old thing back in the day whenever you were generating like SSH crypto keys, it would tell you to move your mouse around in a random pattern on the screen. And it would use those data points as like seed values for generating the crypto. So, interesting. Let's see. Alright, we'll look at tools and exploits if we get through this a bit. But I found some really cool ones here. Or at least ones that sounded cool. One of the ones up here at the top, though, some of these we'd already covered. Like last week, we talked about the Secret Service dismantling that big SIM network up in the New York tri-state area. And there was some kind of like roughly clickbaity article from Google Threat Intel here. but it's like behind a paywall, so we're not going to even worry about that. But there's analysis of a ransomware breach, so I thought let's go take a look at this one. I think this is from, I think this is Munge's blog. Let's see. Analysis of a ransomware breach. So this is from an Ascension spokesperson. An individual working in one of our facilities accidentally downloaded a malicious file that they thought was legitimate. We have no reason to believe that this was anything but an honest mistake. Okay. So this post revisits a 2024 ransomware breach of Ascension Healthcare. Ah, okay. Now it's making sense. This is news again because U.S. Senator Wyden pressed Microsoft to warn its users and address systematic Active Directory flaws that enable these horrible events. But the story goes deeper than that. This is a case study about how what we know dictates what we talk about and informs who we blame. In this post, we'll take a look at the breach, follow the reveals, and keep asking, what do we know now and who do we blame? Well, okay, I know everybody, and I do it too. I know everybody likes to like really rag on Microsoft for Active Directory kind of being like damn vulnerable by default. Let's be honest, it was from a gentler time of the internet and networking. It really was. And it's just something that has perpetuated and carried on and carried forward. So, and they've done a lot to correct it, but there's still a lot of ins and outs in Active Directory. And if I remember right, I think this was a Kerberoasting thing, which that's just a weird artifact of Active Directory. So let's continue on with this. So May 8th, 2024, a months-long IT disaster became visible at Ascension, a St. Louis-based healthcare organization with 131,000 employees, 37,000 aligned providers, and 140 hospitals. They were the latest victims of the Black Basta ransomware attack. So the event shut down Ascension electronic health records and forced hospitals to use paper and pen processes. In some cases, ambulances were routed to other hospitals. An NPR article shared stories from on-the-ground clinics who struggled to work in the environment and recounted close calls and mix-ups from the chaos of the situation. So Ascension dedicated a webpage to the breach and shared updates with the general public. It would take them they said it would take them until mid-June to restore IT functionality and go back to normal basis. So this event kind of happened in May. So we're talking like 6, possibly 7 weeks. Oof. Hey Dan, thanks for the resub, bud, but I don't see why it didn't pop the alert for some reason. But you should have 10 shells now. What's up, man? So let's go through this here. Let's see. So they weren't going to be due until... You saw it? I didn't hear it. Did it play the audio? It's possible because my computer is just freaking full of gremlins, man. I have so many driver issues with it. It's absolutely atrocious. And so it tends to kind of just crash out on me. When it does that, a lot of times it jacks up the audio in OBS. I have to go back and double check the recording later. Let's see. Yeah, right now it's just playing the regular background sound. Not sure why it didn't play. Oh well, I'll take a look at it later. Let's continue on with this. So let's see. Where were we? Because they said it was going to take until mid-June. Here we are. So the ransomware breach at Ascension wasn't the first or last of 2024. Another group extorted $22 million from Change Healthcare in February of 24. Lori Children's Hospital was attacked in January 24, but refused to pay a ransom. The stolen data was posted by the threat actors. So the healthcare news organization STAT reports that Ascension suffered $1.3 billion loss from the cyber attack. So despite that, there's a silver lining. Ascension stated Black Basta only stole files from 7 of the 25,000 servers. So for the people whose data that was on those servers, Ascension has generously offered a post-breach cure-all, a free credit monitoring for 2 years, and a windfall for those excited by this service. Freaking hate that crap. Hey, sorry, we screwed up, we leaked all your data, have some free credit monitoring. Yeah. Hey, Shell and Tell, what's up, man? Well, this is written by Raphael Munge, if I remember right. I'm pretty sure this is his post, and yeah, he gets some zingers in there. I love reading his stuff. Let's see. So in February 2024, a contractor working for an Ascension laptop, working from an Ascension laptop, conducted a search on Microsoft's Bing using Bing's Edge browser, and they clicked on a link that they thought was legitimate. Unbeknownst to them, they ran malware that would open a door to the Black Bastia gang to compromise the entire organization. Headlines like how one employee's honest mistake caused a massive ransomware attack and a mistake allowed hackers into Ascension's IT system said to the public, "There's nothing to see here. This is a story of bad luck, a click, such malware, and healthcare IT systems collapse." Yeah. Did I know there's a Go board game? You're talking about like the one with the white and black dots that you move around? Yeah. There was actually, that was one of the first things that they were really trying to kind of show impact with on deep learning was AlphaGo, if you didn't know about that. Yeah, this was from Google's DeepMind team. AlphaGo was basically one of the first ones to kind of master this game. So things like games like chess and checkers, it was pretty straightforward because all the pieces had kind of definitive moves, and there's lots of chess engines out there. The chess masters are actually so good they can usually tell from the moves somebody's making if they're imitating a chess engine. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, Google DeepMind created AlphaGo a while back, and it was doing pretty baller stuff back in the day for playing it. It was a very hard topic for deep learning to kind of get its head around. I set up a challenge with my foundation versus AlphaGo. Oh, okay. Ooh, really? Hold on. You on right now? Let me see. Hold on. Let's check this out. What we got going on here? Hang on. Hold on. Let's check this out. What we got going on here? All right. Straight to my mom. What do you got going on here? I'm not following you. Let me follow you. All right. Straight to my mom. What do you got going on here? That was actually a storyline in Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles that AI knows how to beat Go. I never got to watch the Sarah Connor Chronicles. Were they any good? That was actually a storyline in Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles that AI knows how to beat Go. Let's see. So the stream is built of many different components that mimic consciousness. Cool. So is it actually playing right now? Nice, man. That's pretty cool, dude. I love this idea. Oh, there we go. Now I see the pieces moving. Awesome. Wish I could blow this up a little bit more. Hang on. See if I can. There we go. That's very cool. Are you running this on a... It's destroying AlphaGo 37-2? Damn. Are you running all the AI systems on like locally? Whatever backend model you're running? It's destroying AlphaGo 37-2. Damn. Are you running all the AI systems on like locally? Because that's pretty sick. Oh, it's running Katago, so the backend has no AI. Nice. That's pretty sick, dude. I mean, I haven't seen... Well, look at Katago. So you guys know that I go off on all sorts of different tangents. Let's see. So what is this? Publicly distributed training run is ongoing. See Katago training for more details. So 2025, Katago remains the strongest open source Go bot available online. So it's trained using an AlphaZero-like process with many enhancements and improvements, and is capable of reaching top levels rapidly entirely from scratch with no outside data. Very cool. That is pretty cool. Hold on. So they're constantly training it. I wonder what kind of model they're using. Because typically, like, you're not using something like a large language model for this, which is all the rage, but there's so many different types of machine learning models that people don't really think about. Cool. One of the other things a lot of people don't recognize is that sometimes these machine learning models, you don't have to have massive hardware to run them, especially if it's very fine-tuned to a specific task. Typically, those large language models, you do have to run a lot of systems. Neat. Very cool, man. That's pretty cool, though. I like it. Very cool. Yeah, Go's one of those tricky systems to kind of get. It was a tricky game for the machines to learn because there's so many varying strategies to it. That's why it was such a big deal when AlphaGo came out. It's not actually conscious, but it's conscious like, yeah. That's still pretty sweet, though. All right, hold on. I've got to see what Mudge has to write here because he's written a lot. And I do like his take on it. He's got a pretty interesting take on security. Let's see here. All right. These headlines are not just a journalist take. One post-breach podcast featured a healthcare CISO expressing sadness that an organization can do everything right, security hygiene, centralized change management, and still their whole system is undone by a single click. Well, if it gets undone by a single click, you're probably not doing everything right. As a former security professional, I have questions. Microsoft Edge has features like Defender's Smart Screen and on by default features said to provide peace of mind for every click. Where was the peace of mind from this click? Surely, based on what we know now, or speculate, there's more to the story than a contractor, a click, and Microsoft Edge Smart Screen. Fortunately, there is. So what do the threat actors say? So we know more about the Ascension breach thanks to a February 2025 leak of chat logs from Black Basta's ransomware group. Reading the chats, I noticed the threat actors strategized about the negotiation, and this discussion raised something I didn't see mentioned in the public. Hold on, let me look at these chat logs real quick. Stop scrolling. My mouse wheel's possessed. When did this happen? Oh, that's probably why I didn't see this. This happened in February. I was very, very, very busy at that time. Interesting. Okay, I'll have to check that out later. I'm not going to dig through it right now. Let's see. Reading the chats, I noticed the threat actors strategized about the negotiation, and this discussion raised something I don't see in public discourse much. It's not easy to pay a ransom. The victim organization likely didn't have a process to make payments with cryptocurrency. And that's not the main hurdle. A victim that engages with organized crime risks breaking US laws. For example, OFAC imposes strict liability for sending funds, even unknowingly, to a sanctioned enemy. Or entity, I should say. This gives rise to the ransomware negotiator, a service what? Oh. A service often bundled with incident response. These deal makers are the key for closing high-dollar transactions with organized crime. They know the price for the decryptors and understand extortion's going rates. They also bring turnkey process for the transaction's compliance, diligence, and disclosure needs, helping the victim and the criminal effect lawful transactions smoothly and quickly. I had no idea there was such a profession as a ransomware negotiator, but I'm not entirely surprised. Ransomware response and negotiation. Negotiate ransoms down 90%. Wow. That's awesome. Just let this be known, guys. There's niches and rich. I fucked it up. There's riches and niches. That's what I keep telling everybody. You're good at negotiating? You're good at ransomware? Have you tried being a ransomware negotiator? That's amazing. Of course, the above is non-technical business speak. Ransomware is a cybersecurity failure, which is a technical failure. Certainly, the technical problem has technical solution. Let's pivot to the technical. Black Bass's chat say they encrypted and effectively seized 12,000 of Ascension systems. So this differs from the official statement that the data was only stolen from 7 servers. While encrypting and exfiltration are different acts, the two numbers suggest different scales of compromise. This said, if Black Basta controlled Ascension's Active Directory, it's not an act of magic to touch 12,000 systems. Black Basta, I hope I'm saying that right. Basta. I'm Black Bastica, it's the Fantastica. Anyway, Black Basta said Black Basta can do as they wish with Microsoft Windows remote execution and file sharing primitives, so there's no need for malware on each host. True. I don't put malware on many hosts when I'm doing a penetration test. The leaked chats include Black Basta's technical reconnaissance of Ascension, where we learned something new. The installed security products. They saw Cylance, EDR, McAfee, and Tanium. I mean, Cylance is pretty decent. McAfee, questionable. I don't have a lot of experience with Tanium, though. Basta. That's why I'm kind of saying it. Black Basta. Bombastic. So I'm sad that we need threat actor chats to learn about present controls. We missed the chance to compare defense in depth claims with real world failure context. During my time, I've only read about security product successes. Aren't the failures a teachable moment too? After a breach, industry experts often say AI will restore the advantage for defenders. Cylance EDR is an AI powered solution. I want to see what he says about Cylance because I got some stuff. Cylance is known for its prevention first philosophy. The product uses AI to predict if a file is malicious before it runs. We know Cylance efficacy claims at the time of the Ascension breach too. May 6th of 24, days before the Black Basta toppled Ascension, Cylance announced nearly 100% detection of the threats in a commissioned independent study. The study was run by the Tully Group, who used 1,000 then recent malware samples in the test. The Tully Group lauded Cylance's low CPU use and ability to detect well in offline and internet-connected scenarios. We don't know if Cylance was installed on the contractor's laptop or the systems where Black Basta used malware, but I want to point out a discrepancy between the security we sell and the reliability of how it's used. Given the outcome at Ascension, I asked, how did the AI-powered product help? That's a very good question, because Cylance was rife with, it was very interesting in the beginning, right? You have the constant cat and mouse game with antivirus and EDR systems, and Cylance was one of the ones, it got a big leg up with some of its AI stuff, but then what happened? Attackers started analyzing it, security researchers started analyzing it, and they found out there was actually a bunch of ways to kind of bypass Cylance. One of them, namely being, is having a bunch of information, like a bunch of strings in your binary that basically made it look kind of like the Steam launcher from Valve. And then it would just be like, oh yeah, that's just Steam. Let it go, bro. Fly on. That's funny. Let's see. Senator Wyden investigates. And this was just another tragic ransomware breach with the same someone clicked narrative. This blog post wouldn't exist, but the incident had a recent reveal that fills in the data. U.S. Senator Wyden's office investigated the Ascension healthcare breach. This included interviews to find the ground truth. The investigation found a key detail. Black Basta used curb roasting to go from the contractor's laptop to full control of Ascension's Windows Enterprise. This control is what allowed Black Basta to carry out their devastating ransomware attack. No, because guys, this is actually a failure of two parts if they use curb roasting. Unfortunately, the iPad is still dead, so I can't diagram this out. But when you do curb roasting, what you're essentially doing is you're requesting a ticket granting service ticket. So a service ticket from Kerberos. That's going to be encrypted with the target account's password. So you can reverse that, you can try and crack that password, and when that happens, if you are able to do that, then bam, you've recovered the account's password. So this is a two-part failure. One is that it was Kerberoastable, and they were probably using weak encryption because by default it uses RC4, which is not strong. Now they've implemented where you can do all the way up to AES 256, which is great. Doesn't completely, fix the idea of Kerberoasting, but it does help mitigate that because it's much stronger encryption, much more computationally intensive. However, the problem is if they were able to get it even with the RC4 and to crack it, that means it had probably a pretty weak password. So they had probably an ineffective control set coupled with a weak password scenario. Ugh. Plug the iPad in so it won't be dead. I did, dude. Hang on, actually. Let me see if I can come back. Okay. Sock made me some tea after I'd already opened my Jocko, so now I'm just double fisting them, kind of. I'm alternating. Let me see if this will come up. Any luck? No, it doesn't look like it's working. Lame. You're fired, 3U. Anyway. Love you long time, Gumby. I'm out of room for cups, woman.
I'll take this one.
No, it's not empty. Not sponsored by Jocko yet. Okay, here, you can take it. She used to be so, like, cautious about not wanting to interrupt the stream, and now she's like, forget it, I'm here. Oh, that's funny. That this whole thing came about because of curb roasting. Gonna party like it's 2012. All right, so let's contrast this new detail with the industry discourse. Reputable organizations like the US government and FIRST release advisories with IOC's pie chart breakdowns of COM versus net threat actor TLDs and helpful advice. The advice included train users implement 2FA, patch, use legal software, and watch out for remote management tools. That's good advice because I love remote management tools. Living off the land, there's no living like it. For all this well-meaning guidance, acting on a moment of interest, this connective tissue of Active Directory privilege escalation as a systemic issue didn't come up. So why didn't Active Directory domain privilege escalation come up? Is it because everyone understands the issue, so there's no point to repeating it? Or does this mean, or does this missing and not missed detail suggest cybersecurity narratives about the wrong things? True. I need a stream with Sock trying to hack. That would actually be pretty hilarious. She's gotten better at using computers since we've been married, but like basics of networking, nothing. I'll talk to her about it. I'll see if she wants to do a fun stream one night. I really doubt it though. All right, let's see. Oh good, he does give a little breakdown of curb roasting here. So curb roasting is a technique that became another often globally privileged user. Oh, sorry, let me back up. Curb roasting is a technique to become another often globally privileged user in the network managed with Microsoft Active Directory. So I'm going to spare you the full description of ticket granting service tickets and cut to the chase. Any user on an Active Directory managed computer can request a file encrypted with the password of certain special accounts. These special accounts are often for software services like SQL databases and not people. This encrypted file is available for the Kerberos authentication protocol. Once the attacker has this file, the next step is to guess the password to decrypt the file. What'd I just say? Called it. We call this password cracking. The cracking happens on an attacker asset. It's not visible to us. When cracking yields a password, the attacker now has a credential for this other account in Active Directory's network. Any user can ask Active Directory for a list of these special accounts. The attack doesn't require any special insider knowledge. Cobalt Strike never had a curb roasting feature, so much of my work with this product was able to provide methods to operationalize new and existing techniques. For example, SOX pivoting is how Cobalt Strike users curb roast with Impacket and other standalone tools. My work with Cobalt Strike also set conventions to develop and use post-exploitation tools, specifically .NET or Beacon object files. This made Cobalt Strike a first choice to use Rubius and Kerberos BOF. Kerbeus BOF. While Cobalt Strike only had basic post-exploitation primitives, I considered curb roasting a staple attack, and I taught it in my 2019 Red Team Operations with Cobalt Strike course. Curb roasting is not the... I don't know what I just said there. Curb roasting isn't the root cause of the Ascension ransomware event. It's an Active Directory... I can't talk. Active Directory privilege escalation. The process involves harvesting credential material and using them to become users who can do anything the current user can't. Pivoting identities is how an attacker goes from control of one laptop via one person of 131 plus thousand clicking a link, to the power to enact their will at scale within the enterprise. Yep. Pretty much. I mean, because a lot of times the systems that are affected, that can be affected by Kerberos are very privileged systems in the environment, or they have access to very privileged systems in the environment. Raphael Munch, here, I'll link you guys the article. There you go. Raphael Munch is the guy who wrote Armitage way back in the day, which was like kind of like the first like GUI front end for Metasploit, and then eventually that rolled on and became Cobalt Strike. One sec. I like Munch because he's got a really good writing style. All right, let's see. Let's go here. So Active Directory privilege escalation is not a cur roasting problem. There's many ways to escalate privileges in Active Directory. More importantly, this is a fully understood area of risk either. New features and works on Microsoft technologies occasionally introduce new Active Directory privilege escalation options, and new privilege escalations are occasionally discovered. Active Directory privilege escalation isn't an obscure issue that plagues irresponsible organizations. It's a pervasive problem. An anecdote that was once relayed to me from a group said a group of consultants went into a financial organization and measured how many employee computers had an automatable path to full control of the network. I think the number was 96% or higher. So the ubiquity of these paths go from unprivileged context to full control of a network is why I refer to Active Directory as IT's lead in the pipes danger. Yeah, lead in the pipes danger. These paths are not patched with software updates, and they don't necessarily exist in a network during day one of its build or rebuild. Instead, they creep in as unintended consequences of routine IT activity. Yeah. Hey, Carlo. Sorry, I was just checking your message because it caught me off for a second. Let's see. Author of Hack the Day, a penetration tester diary, practical journal to organize reports, notes, and labs. Nice, man. Welcome in, dude. Let me go take a look. Hold on. I want to go take a look at your book. Pen Tester's Diary. Hold on. Let's see if I can find it on Amazon. Hack the Day. It's not coming up. Let me try it directly on Amazon. Let's see. Hack the Dat. That's not it. Well, I found it in Italian. Wonder if surely there's an English edition. Anyway, what's up, Carlo? Welcome in, man. I'll have to try and find. Hey, Carlo, if you're still here, grab me a link to the English edition so I can take a look at it. Because actually, I know a couple of folks. I might go give a copy of this too. If only I spoke Italian. You know, what's funny is actually I was having a talk with Sock the other day, and it was the classic nerd talk. You know, nerd pillow talk. What superpower would you want to have? And she was actually kind of surprised by my answer and then realized she would actually like that too. I said the all speak. You know, a lot of people are like, hey, I'd like to be able to fly or have super strength or, you know, x-ray vision, or my friend was really creative. He said change probabilities on the fly. I was like, that's a really good one. I decided I would like the all speak. The ability to just be able to converse with anybody anywhere in the world in their native tongue, I think would be just amazing. And very, very practical. By the way, also, I wanted to mention something here. So when he's talking about this group of consultants going and looking at a network and finding something like 96% of the users had a direct path to take over the environment, this is an extreme case, but oftentimes whenever I'm going in to do a penetration test or a red team and I start gathering information and analyzing it in Bloodhound, I find sometimes pretty significant percentages like this. Maybe not as high as 96%. I haven't seen one that bad, but I've seen it upwards of 50%. On average, like in a really locked down environment, it would be even it would still kind of creep up as high as maybe 10%. Just because, like Munge is saying here, these kind of security issues creep in over time as just work is being done on the systems. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, instead of something, hold on, let me go back here. They don't necessarily exist in the network during day one of the build. Instead, they creep in as unintended consequences of routine IT activity. Exactly. This is why I usually recommend a lot of sysadmins and guys on the blue side look at some offensive tradecraft, because if you don't know how the enemy is going to throw a punch at you, how are you supposed to block it? Or how are you not supposed to put yourself in a position to just leave like your face wide open and, take 5 fingers to the face? Slap. So they might just be going through setting up a SQL database and not realize the implications of how they're doing things and the potential holes it leaves for them, like Kerber roasting. Let's see. I don't want to discount the importance of Kerber roasting as a contributing factor in these ransomware breaches either. In a 2025 blog post, while Kerber roasting still matters for security teams, Verona shared that in nearly every Windows domain compromise our forensics team investigated last year, Kerber roasting was attempted and often succeeded. Yeah. Because of this, actually, what I usually recommend to my clients is that they put in a honeypot. They should be putting in an account that looks like every other account. It is supposed to blend in and never be used. And there should be special triggers put in your security systems that say, if event X happens against this account, or anything really happens against this account, it's an immediate, like, Sev 1 incident. You got to put everybody on blast right now, get everybody in, call in the troops, because something bad is going on, or something very wrong is going on. So because of this, I actually very carefully scrutinize and am very selective whenever I do Kerber roasting, because I don't want to get caught. Kerber roasting is a go-to attack technique because the issue is a fundamental of how the network operates and manages service accounts in Active Directory. Oh, so only the dedication is Italian. The rest of the pages and templates you can use for your own reports. Oh, nice, dude. Very cool. Yeah, did I leave that up? Hang on. I'm going to open that in a different browser real quick. Because I want to go check it out later. And Google search is doing typical Google things and being idiotic. I don't know why it's not coming up. That's okay. That's going to remind me though. I've got it saved so I can go check it out later. All right. So with such a devastating issue, one of many, it's fair to ask, when did we find out about this? What was done since we found out? And let's discuss these things. Tim Medin introduced Kerber roasting at SANS Hackfest 2014 in his talk, Kicking the Guard Dog of Hades. I actually didn't know where it originated. That's awesome. This talk was the beginning of an offensive security work to understand and socialize the issue. Recently, Tim wrote, when I came up with Kerber roasting in 2014, I never thought it would live for more than a year or two. I erroneously thought that people would clean up the poor dated credentials and move to a more secure encryption. Here we are 11 years later, and unfortunately, it still works more often than it should. Yeah, it does. The future of any security discovery is always uncertain, but we do know others have to understand the issue before it's possible to defend against it. What I just say. And understanding it isn't a given. I was in the audience that day, and I don't understand the talk, or didn't understand the talk. I'm not an Active Directory expert, I never was, but thanks to the community tutorials, tools, and other exploitation of Active Directory issues, I have a working knowledge I wouldn't have gotten on my own. And I assert that at the same time, the security professionals, including security architects at Microsoft. So this is why I'm so passionate about the security conversation. Without it, we have no chance to address the issue. But what happens when the issues don't get addressed? They move from temporary curiosity to repeated tragedy. This is where Active Directory attacks are today. These issues are absent from the broader security narrative. What replaces these issues are simple narratives that point blame at other targets. So this is the substance of the OST debate. What does he talk about for OST here? Oh, offensive security tools. Got it. So a strategic campaign to educate the public on how criminals co-opt tools and research from the offensive security ecosystem. While these critics may acknowledge that the issues are a problem too, they hold individual offensive security researchers and tool authors morally responsible for harm and imply they must conclusively fix it. Well, a lot of them kind of do. If you didn't know about this, a lot of the off-the-shelf, I'd say damn near most, probably better than 99% if I had to actually put a number on it. When you go get some kind of security tool that's geared towards offensive security, and you just go pull it down from GitHub or whatever, there's actually IOCs baked into it. So it will work and it will do what it's supposed to, but it's also going to be easily detectable most of the time. If the defenders have indicators of compromise already built in, or whoever they've contracted for has those. So, for example, the one I like to use is Evil Jinx. Evil Jinx had an IOC built into it. And if you didn't know where to look and you didn't go analyze the code, you wouldn't know where to find it. Kuba actually did a pretty slick job of hiding it in the code. It wasn't super slick, but you actually had to read it and understand what was happening to go through and find it. Otherwise, it sent the little string Evil Jinx in all the future requests into it. Let's see. I always felt these debates missed the bigger picture, though, of offensive security professionals. Red teamers are not a tiny cabal that execute niche security tests solely for the benefit of a mature client organization. Offensive security insights in the technical truth of complex issues and yield strategic security leaps. Its formally default open culture is what socialized offensive ideas to the security profession. But that culture has changed, partially to align with its critics. The space is moving to fragmented, closed ecosystems and fragmented communities as a whole. Some continue with openness and others prize offense insights as trade secrets to win security tests. While this does reduce visibility and blame for offensive security, I believe it stagnates the security profession and further separates discourse from technical truth. Absolutely. That's something that I've noticed has kind of happened since I've been in security, more or less in a, not really in a professional asset, but like in the professional sphere. Not when I was working in it, but around 2010 is when I started my first IT job, right? Kind of doing help desk out of college. And when I was doing that, I was in a lot of these various groups and communities, and it was very open. And then there's been a shift probably in the last 5 years. Make of that what you will. It's currently 2025. That a lot of these groups have started to fragment and partition and start keeping a lot more closely guarded trade secrets, let's call it, for lack of a better term. Let's call it, or tradecraft, that's a better term actually. And not being nearly as open about sharing it and publishing it. So, and he's absolutely right. It does stagnate the whole idea of pushing security forward, because if people don't know about it, they can't defend against it. There's only been one time on one penetration test where I actually used something that was, let's call it undisclosed tradecraft. And it was just because my coworker who was researching it was still working on it. And this we actually used as a test case. It wasn't that, hey, we knew about this and we kept it hidden and nobody can know about this except our clients who pay us a big fat fee or whatever. No, it was, he was still refining it and he was preparing to release it. So it turned out to be a great test case. Absolutely threw CrowdStrike for a loop. Completely bypassed it. It was great. We were able to dump LSAS with it. Let's see. So what's up with Senator Wyden's call to action? So we now have a moment on Kerber roasting. In October 2024, Microsoft published guidance to help mitigate Kerber roasting. In the same post, Microsoft announced Windows Server 2025 and Windows 11, starting with 24H2, will deprecate RC4. Good. And Microsoft also introduced delegated managed service accounts, so a new Kerber roasting resilient way to manage software service accounts in Active Directory. So we know that this action is from Senator Wyden's pressure. In a public letter to the chair of the US FTC, Wyden revealed that his staff spoke with Microsoft in July of 2024 and urged them to warn the customers about Kerber roasting. Really? Hold on. Let me take a look at this public letter real fast. Let's see. This is from Wyden's office to the Honorable Andrew N. Ferguson at the FTC. Does he really get the honorable title? I don't know how these Washington titles work. I write to request that the FTC investigate and hold Microsoft responsible for its gross cybersecurity negligence, resulting in ransomware attacks against critical infrastructure, including U.S. healthcare organizations, which has caused enormous harm to healthcare providers, put patient care at risk, and continues to threaten U.S. national security. So does he mention... Here we go. The hackers exploited a technique called Kerber roasting to gain access to privileged accounts on Ascension's Microsoft Active Directory server. The hacking technique leverages Microsoft's continued support by default for an insecure encryption technology from the 1980s called RC4 that federal agencies and cybersecurity experts, including experts working for Microsoft, have for more than a decade warned is dangerous. True. Now, part of this is also because Microsoft always prized themselves on backwards compatibility. And one of the best demonstrations I ever saw of this was someone installed DOS 3.1. They installed DOS 3.1 on a system, got Doom working on it, and then went through and systematically updated DOS 3.1 through every version of Windows up to, I want to say Windows 7. I would think that's where they updated it. And through every version tested, did Doom still work? And it did. Because Microsoft has really prized this backwards compatibility model. So I get where they were going with this and why this has been such an issue, but this kind of insecure encryption, is there really some system that it only works with RC4? So if that's the case, what they should have done is maybe not, what did he say they're going to do with RC4? Let's see. It's going to deprecate RC4. Typically that means they're probably not going to remove it, but they're going to at least turn it off by default. At least turn it off by default. Hey, Yubby. Oh, wait, you were already here. You just switched from Twitch to YouTube. Let's see. You're just double fisting the stream. Giggity. But that's interesting that I've never seen a senator like literally call out any kind of technical detail before. Let's see, what do you say? My staff spoke to senior Microsoft officials of July in 2024 and urged the company to warn its customers about the threats posed by curb roasting. What else did he say in here? Microsoft declined to explicitly warn its customers that they are vulnerable to curb roasting hacking techniques unless they change the default settings chosen by Microsoft. Wait, here's that. Let's look at this again. Let me read the entire context here. So while my staff specifically requests that Microsoft publish and publicize clear guidance in plain English so that senior executives would understand this serious avoidable cyber risk. Yeah, good luck with that. Anyway, Microsoft instead published a highly technical blog post on an obscure area of the company's website on Friday afternoon. Okay, you had a really, really ridiculously, hugely big ask here of how do you explain curb roasting to someone who probably has zero technical experience, right? How do you explain it in a way that's meaningful that doesn't actually overblow the impact of it? What's up, nerd? Hey, Cypher. Microsoft took no meaningful steps to publicize this blog post. Moreover, Microsoft declined to explicitly warn its customers that they are vulnerable to the curb roasting hacking technique unless they change the default settings chosen by Microsoft. Oh, okay, I get what he's saying now. Yeah. And that's true. Like, it probably should, starting, I'm hoping here with, what do you say, Win Server 2025, that's not going to be the default. RC4 should be opt-in, not opt-out. What else did he mention about curb roasting? Let's see. So although Microsoft is clearly not treating curb roasting as a serious threat, US and allied security agencies are, yada yada. Okay. Wait, hold on, I see a note here. CISA, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the NSA, along with several foreign partner agencies, issued joint guidance on October 16th of 24, focused on mitigating Iranian cyber threats, which specifically warned about curb roasting and the importance of disabling RC4. Well, good. That should have already been done a long ass time ago. There's hardening guidelines for Active Directory. There's a ton of hardening guidelines for Active Directory. Anyway, I do like that he mentions this. To be clear, curb roasting is just one technique used by hackers to exploit vulnerabilities in Microsoft software, and the Ascension hack is just one example. Yeah, there's lots of ways, but I'm glad he's bringing that to light. And at least he's like, hey, can we at least fix this really low-hanging fruit? I don't know who Senator Wyden is, but I mean, at least, you know, he's doing something good there. So we now know that this action is from Senator Wyden's pressure in a public letter to the chair of the FTC. He wanted Microsoft to warn their customers about curb roasting. Microsoft uses RC4 in Kerberos is one of the details Senator Wyden used to justify his concerns about Microsoft's security choices. The focus on RC4 is well-meaning, but it's not the full picture of the attack. Tim Menlin addressed this in curb roasting Microsoft and a senator. So with curb roasting attack, attackers are targeting the encryption key, which is the service password, not the underlying protocol. The common encryption protocols for encryption on the ticket are RC4, AES 128, and 256. The attackers aren't fundamentally breaking RC4, but the fundamental problem that leads to a successful curb roasting attack is bad passwords. Exactly. RC4 is garbage encryption by modern standards. It's very old and should totally probably be, cut out of there. However, if you have a 20-character random-ass password in there that's upper lowercase, like truly randomized password, you're not going to break it. your chances are really small. Did I already? Oh, it wouldn't let me do another swear jar. Let's see. Ideally, using a managed service account, which is Microsoft's blog, for a long, or use a long, secure, preferably random password. Remember, the attackers are guessing billions of passwords per second, so a secure password for a user is much different than a secure password for these accounts. Oh, I'm glad he brought this up. Bad successor. So Microsoft introduced delegated managed service accounts, or DMSAs, to address curb roasting. This feature creates a path to managed service accounts with long random passwords, which makes them near impossible to crack. DMSA also has an easy migration path for existing service accounts that are susceptible to curb roasting. The Microsoft Server, or the Windows Server 2025 feature shipped days after Microsoft's October 24 curb roasting guidance. I love to say problem solved, but that's not the whole story. Yuval Gordon, a researcher from Akamai, looked at DMSA and found something horrifying. Microsoft's DMSA feature added a trivial path to escalate privileges in Active Directory. What's worse, this attack doesn't require the organization to even use DMSA. It just required a Windows Server 2025 Active Directory domain. I don't remember if this was you had to have a Server 2025 domain controller, or if you had to just have a Server 2025, or if your functional level had to be that high. I want to say it was just you had to have a Server 2025 AD in there. Let's see, Akamai reported the issue to Microsoft in April. Microsoft accepted the issue and said it would fix it, but they rated the issue as a moderate severity. So that means they didn't see a need to immediately fix the issue or warn the users about it. Yuval and his colleagues disagreed with Microsoft's severity assessment. They worried that the ease of exploitation and the lack of urgency for a fix put others at risk. They went public with their findings and steps to demonstrate the attack, which they dubbed Bad Successor, which we covered here many, many months ago. The decision reignited the coordinated disclosure debate. Critics maligned Yuval for seeking clout over the safety of potential bad successor victims. Their logic, because Microsoft will fix the problem and there's no fix now, it is harmful to make this attack public and arm criminals. This criticism was echoed in some of the industry media around Bad Successor. In some cases, it was featured prominently. In which way? German cybersecurity agency flags critical Windows flaw enabling Windows takeover. I love they said this. BSI warned of an unpatched flaw in Windows Server 2025 Active Directory that allowed domain takeover via DMSA. Hold on, I need to actually look at this real fast. Where was... I believe this was Bad Successor's actual original article. What was the requirements for the attack? No, go away. Go away. Let's see, what did he find real quick? The attack exploits the delegated Microsoft service, managed service accounts feature, works with the default configurations, trivial to implement. Although Microsoft states they plan to fix it, patch is not currently available, therefore the organizations need to take proactive measures to reduce their exposure. What was the contents of it? Let's see. What was the response, the requirements for this? I want to say it was just a 2025 AD, like not an Active Directory, but a 2025 server that is a domain controller. Let's see if I can find it real quick. It's been a while since I read this article. When did it come out? Let's see. It came out, yeah, in May. I think I had just gotten back into doing the news streams in May. Let's see. What's the requirement, though? All right, I'm not going to dig for it, but I'm pretty sure that all you needed was a Server 2025 AD, or domain controller. Hey, Skull Thoughts, thanks for coming online, man. Welcome in. Hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday. All right, let's see. All right, some defended Yuval's actions, but rarely with a blanket trust of Yuval's professional judgment or respect for the role of offensive security. Rather, supporters described why it's okay this time. One supporter argued that Windows Server 2025 isn't widely deployed yet, and it's better to know about this issue early. Public information pressures Microsoft to act. Another ally offered that even if no fix is available, system administrators have a right to know if a supposed upgrade introduces a no-fix devastating attack to their environment. True. If I was in his situation, I probably would have done the same thing. I'd have been like, hey, by the way, everyone, there's a serious issue. And you know what? Even in the article here, in the original disclosure of it, where did he put that? Detections and mitigations. Where did he put it? Hold on. See if I can find it real fast. It didn't scroll to the correct area. Let's see. Ah, here we go. Oh, what is going on with this? This site's rendering is atrocious. There we go. Where's their detections? Yeah, so even here, you can audit DMSA creation, right? You could have logging around this that said, hey, by the way, we don't use DMSAs. So if you ever see one of these, then boom, you instantly know it's going to be an issue. So it's not like he just went out and said, hey, look at my big exploit balls. He said, hey, by the way, here's how you can put on sunglasses and not have to see my big exploit balls ever again. Jeez. And that's usually pretty common with a lot of these exploit techniques when they get dropped is there's detections and mitigations. Every time any of my friends who are big security researchers, when they put out stuff like this, that's what they do too. They put out, hey, here's how you detect it, here's how you mitigate it, until an official fix is put in place. Let's see. Outsiders may see this as a spirited industry debate, two well-meaning sides working through difficult questions, but these debates were not always nuanced considerations of two valid choices. They're often character attacks for not making a specific choice. The party that loses is the selfish, clout-chasing security researcher. That didn't seem like clout-chasing to me. I don't know, maybe that's just my point of view on it since I'm on the offensive side. So a CVE was issued for bad successor and Microsoft did patch it. Sounds like a win. The issue was identified, reported, and fixed, except bad successor is not a software mistake, it's a byproduct of complex interactions of permissions and features in Microsoft's Active Directory. You've all reviewed Microsoft's fix and found that it did address the wide open privilege escalation he reported, but even with the fix, DMSA adds attack-friendly credential and privilege abuse primitives. Pretty much. Anytime you start adding something to a complex system, you're going to have complex interactions. Curb roasting and bad successor remind me of a pattern I've seen before too. To understand this pattern, we need to revisit Pass the Hash Discord from a decade ago. So we understand that if an attacker knows a username and password, they could do things as the user. Well, before two-factor anyway. But it was quite a reveal in 1997 when Paul Ashton posted to NT Bug Track, Windows allows authentication with the user's encrypted password. There's no need to crack it, just use it to authenticate. This is the Pass the Hash attack. Mark Rusunovich and Nathan Ides Pass the Hash, How Attackers Spread and How to Stop Them presentation at TechEd in 2014 is a favorite overview. So this talk was part of Microsoft's effort to socialize their new mitigations and efforts to address Pass the Hash. So in an effort that began in 2012 with the publication of guidance to mitigating Pass the Hash techniques. Let's see. I'm going to go with X-Rod. What's up, man? Thanks for coming on the line. Let's see. So like curb roasting, Microsoft waited to acknowledge the attack on the issue for 15 years for Pass the Hash and 11 years for curb roasting. Damn, that's pretty bad. So I chalked this up to Microsoft's public security servicing criteria. So this is a list of stuff that Microsoft will act on when it's reported. The list is a necessity. A lot of intended functionality aids attackers and authorized users alike. Microsoft has a set of expectations. But dogmatic adherence to these criteria slows Microsoft actions on risks from intended behavior, even when attack trends show a serious issue. User account control bypasses, for example, don't violate Microsoft's concept of security boundaries and would go unaddressed for years. Yep. Typically, there's still lots of ways to pull off these UAC bypasses in a system. So if you don't know what UAC is, let's say you go and run like even just Task Manager, because it's a privileged task, and you get a little pop-up on your screen that grays everything out. You just get a little pop-up saying, hey, this privileged process wants to run. You have to click explicitly yes or no. It's actually pretty well done in that you can't really do anything while that prompt is up there. However, there's lots of ways to kind of bypass that, and certain systems don't require that prompt to happen. And what that does is it takes your process from kind of a restricted medium level to a high level. So even if you're an administrator, a lot of times you're operating in that medium level integrity. And a lot of the UAC bypasses still work. The only thing that usually saves people is something like Defender or some other EDR they've got on their system. So we see this cultural tap dance with Active Directory issues. Mark and Nathan's talk frames pass the hash as an intended single sign-on behavior. This is the ability to use a share. Yeah, to use a share the way Black Basta uses shares, or print files without typing in your username and password each time. Microsoft never admits their choice contributed to the problem. A stance that attracted a rebuke from Skip Duckwell and Chris Campbell's post. Why we don't get it and why we shouldn't. Nice. By the way, if you're not familiar with how pass the hash works, typically a lot of systems, if they will allow NTLM authentication protocol, then you can just use the hash to go and authenticate to the system, the encrypted password hash. So let's say, for example, you capture that hash, then you can just use that to go authenticate to a bunch of systems. So you don't have to, it's not salted, it's not like secured in any particular way. Once you capture it, you can use it pretty much almost like the password. That's the gist of it. It was partially kind of mitigated with the bringing in with NTLM v2 or net NTLM, where it does have a challenge response mechanism where you can still capture those and try to crack them offline like you do with Kerberos. But again, it's only going to be doable if the user has a weak password, which sadly is still very common. So Microsoft now publishes guidance, made baseline changes, add mitigation features, and declared the problem mostly solved. So like Kerberosing, Microsoft passed the hash efforts, added a new attack tool. Prior to Windows 8.1, the remote desktop protocol required the attacker to know the plain text username and password to log in. But thanks to the mitigation features, it became possible to pass the hash with RDP. Yep. Researchers evaluated Microsoft's baseline changes and found that yes, they took away some options, but the attack remained intact. Will Schroeder's 2014 Pass the Hash is Dead, Long Live Pass the Hash is one of the definitive explorations on the topic. The Pass the Hash, really Pass the Anything, attack is still alive today in part of breaches like Ascension. Microsoft did deliver powerful mitigation features, and I imagine they expect them to address the remaining attacks. The challenge is some of the features are complex and difficult to use without specialized knowledge, or not possible to use without disabling a needed legacy feature. That's the kicker there, is that it's not just one system, it's multiple. So this makes their adoption less common, but Microsoft doesn't weigh this. They argue that their product is defensible, and it's now the user's problem to figure out the features. Not a great stance. Yeah, we know it's vulnerable. We're going to leave that as an exercise for the user. Let's see. With Microsoft's DMSA, we again welcome an opt-in mitigation to a new attack opportunity into Active Directory. That is, after Microsoft's patch to fix Bad Successor, our collective awareness of the new attack primitive isn't from Microsoft. It's from Yuval and the Red Teamers, who will further explore his work. It's possible no accident that Yuval titled this post-fix reviewed, Bad Successor is Dead, Long Live Bad Successor. Alright. Let's see. Senator Wyden's public letter to the FTC starts with a damning conclusion. I write to request that the Federal Trade Commission investigate and hold Microsoft responsible for its gross cybersecurity negligence, resulting in ransomware attacks against critical infrastructure, including U.S. healthcare organizations, which have caused enormous harm to healthcare providers, put patient care at risk, and continues to threaten U.S. national security. It's in this letter we also learned that Senator Wyden wasn't too pleased with Microsoft's actions so far. And we actually already covered this, but I'll read it again. While my staff specifically requested that Microsoft publish and publicize clear guidance in plain English so that senior executives could understand this serious avoidable cyber risk, good luck with the executives, Microsoft instead published a highly technical blog post on an obscure area of the company's website on Friday afternoon. Microsoft took no meaningful steps to publicize this blog post. Moreover, Microsoft declined to explicitly warn its customers that they are vulnerable to the Kerberoasting hacking technique unless they change the default settings chosen by Microsoft. As such, it's highly likely that most companies, government agencies, and nonprofits that are Microsoft customers remain vulnerable to Kerberoasting. Now, let's think about this for a second. Let's say they have written this in a way that senior executives could understand it, right? And then what do they envision happening? I don't know what the senator envisioned happening here, where let's say Microsoft writes this, it's in plain English, whatever that means, where even a senior executive who probably has limited to none technical experience sees this and says, hey, by the way, are we vulnerable to this? Okay. I'm sure that his IT team is going to come through and probably not understand it necessarily, and he's going to link them to the same guidance, and maybe they're going to do some digging. But if they didn't understand it with the technical blog post and know that, hey, well, these are the preconditions that have to happen, how are they going to actually address the issue? it doesn't, all it does is try to force pressure from the top down. And in technical environments, that doesn't work out all that well when there's not like a measurable metric, which the senior executives don't know what that is. The IT team is either not going to know what it is, not care what it is, or they're going to do a good job. So you've only got like a 33% win rate, all things being equal. Chances are it's probably closer to 15% because there's a lot of people in IT that just do not give a damn. So I share Senator Wyden's frustration here. When these issues were well known and used by organized crime, Microsoft started a campaign to message it as human-operated ransomware, a tool and actor framed with a flawed defense roadmap that deflects blame from the systemic weakness in Active Directory. This message was bigger than my ability to take on, but it's a message that's fed the industry mob mentality to blame security researchers and the offensive security profession for these issues. Detecting and Mitigating Active Directory Compromises, published by Australian Signals Directorate, which, by the way, if you don't know who these are, they're kind of like Australia's NSA, has the guidance and acknowledgments to Microsoft's materials acknowledges that Microsoft's materials are basically lacking. It's one of many extra Microsoft efforts to address the root cause of the issue. Wyden's letter concluded with a damning statement about the whole thing. This is one company benefiting from the status quo, Microsoft itself. Instead of delivering secure software for its customers, Microsoft has built a multi-billion-dollar secondary business selling cybersecurity add-on services to those organizations that can afford it. I 100% agree. At this point, Microsoft has become like an arsonist selling firefighting services to the victims. Damn. That's bold. Ars Technica and other media outlets covered Senator Wyden's letter, and the Ars Technica article published a response from Microsoft. RC4 is an old standard, and we discourage its use in both how our engineering and our software and our documentation to our customers, which is why it makes up less than 0.1% of our traffic. Does it really? Does it? I'd love to know where they got that metric. However, disabling it completely would break many customer systems. For this reason, we're on a path to gradually reduce the extent to which customers can use it while providing strong warnings against it and advice for using it in the safest way possible. We have it on our own roadmap to ultimately disable its use. We've engaged with the Senator's office on this issue. We'll continue to listen and answer questions from them and from others in the government. In Q1 of 2026, new installations of Active Directory domains using Windows Server 2025 will have RC4 disabled by default, meaning any new domain will inherently be protected against attacks relying on RC4 weaknesses. We plan to introduce additional mitigations for extending in-market deployments with considerations for compatibility and continuity of critical customer services. Now, this actually brings up two topics here. What do they say in here? Disabling this completely would break many customers' systems. If it's breaking your system to change the encryption from, let's say, RC4 to AES 128 or 256, even in here, you're using a system that is inherently like non-maintained, right? I can't imagine anybody that is coming through and saying, oh, by the way, yeah, we're using this feature, and if it's jacked up, then we're just not gonna, you're not gonna be able to use us. If you go and make your systems more secure by using heavy encryption, you're done. We just don't get any support. No, instead, I visualize it kind of like the airline industry where they're still operating on COBOL mainframes. Yeah, by the way, if you're looking for a lucrative career, go learn COBOL. I think it was COBOL. Was it COBOL or Pascal? Pretty sure it was COBOL. Yeah. Another thing here, also, they're talking about, hey, this is relying on RC4 weaknesses. RC4 just makes it simpler. The main thing here is the weak-ass password. If the password's weak, then that's the issue. Okay, Gumby says COBOL, it's got to be COBOL. It's used in tons of banks. Oh, yeah, I 100% believe that, man. Hey, Ford, what's up? Let's see. So here, Microsoft latched on to the red herring of RC4 and failed another chance to own the Active Directory domain privilege escalation problem set. Tim Medlin also reacted to Microsoft's response in his curb roasting Microsoft in a Senator post. Microsoft claims that these affect less than 0.1% of traffic, but this statistic is misleading. It's like saying only 0.1% of our doors are used by burglars. Good analogy. Attackers will simply choose the weak door. Microsoft has prioritized backwards compatibility over security, leaving all organizations vulnerable by default. The truth is, since the protocol is enabled by default, all an attacker needs to do to request is an RC4 ticket. The surrounding traffic, which is 99.9%, is irrelevant. Microsoft has left RC4 enabled because they have chosen to support backwards compatibility, which leads to faster Kerberos attacks. Pretty much. It just makes it faster. That's what it does. If you had the same crappy password and it's encrypted with RC4, AES-128, or AES-256, you're probably still going to crack it. It's just going to take a little longer. Hang on one sec, guys. Alright, I'm back. Let's see, the second paragraph is misleading as well. They state that in Q1 of 2026, any new installations of Active Directory domains using Server 2025 will have RC4 disabled by default. The key here is new. Existing Active Directory domains will still maintain their backwards compatibility, but RC4 by default. If a new server is installed and doesn't support RC4, that doesn't prevent the rest of the domain and the domain controllers, which are basically the brains of the domain, from preventing RC4. True. Just like in Bad Successor, right? For Bad Successor, you just had to have a domain controller running Server 2025 to use the DMSA mechanisms. Same thing here. If you've got 10 domain controllers and 9 of them are on Server 2025 and one of them's still running, Windows 2012, that one domain controller, which is just as viable as all the other, it's going to be vulnerable to it. I see that a lot whenever I'm testing environments. Very rarely are all the domain controllers the same kind of build. A lot of times there's a mixture of operating systems in there. Let's see. Working with the new details, Ars Technica published a second article. Their article used Tim Medden's comments and explained curb roasting with more depth. When I saw the first article, I was excited by Senator Wyden's attention to the systemic issue, but Ars Technica's second article went back to the same old blame exercise. The article's social media hook says it all. There's no excuse for an organization as big and sensitive as Ascension suffering a Kerberos attack in 2025, though Microsoft is also partly to blame for the breach. There really isn't. Actually, I'm kind of agree with them on this. I was like, why are you using... They all kind of get lost in the minutia, which is why when the senator's letter said, hey, I want you to explain this in simple terms where some executive can understand it, I was like, it reminded me of something. It was a conversation that Richard Feynman had with a reporter, a newspaper reporter. And he asked him to explain, in simple layman's terms, what he got his Nobel Prize for. And he said, if I could explain it in simple layman's terms, it wouldn't be worthy of a Nobel Prize. I agree with that. There's a counter argument to that, though. And that is, I think it was Einstein who said, if you can't explain something in simple layman's terms, you haven't mastered the material. That could be apocryphal. I don't remember if that was actually Einstein who said that. But there's two sides to this in here. But there's so many gotchas and underlying facets in here. They could have just put out a damn article that said, your organization probably has bad passwords. You guys need to fix this crap. And it would have been more impactful than some article explaining esoteric aspects of Kerber roasting. I almost got to meet the Blaise Bits last week. Hey, what's up, Alex? Wait, what was last week? What was going on last week, Alex? My brain is fried. I've been kind of like neck deep buried in preparing a blog post on all things language models. It's not going to have anything earth-shattering in it, guys, just believe me, but it's kind of like I called it a gentle crash course to large language models, because it is. It goes through like the history and the evolution of like AI and machine learning real briefly, and hopefully in a funny way. I think I'm funny. My mom says I'm funny. Anyway, and then it goes into like, hey, this is where we're at in the current state, and here's the security challenges we're facing with it there at the end. And I've just been like up to my eyeballs in it. Oh, you were with Chris at CYC? Bro, dude. Yeah, so Griffin, guys, you know Griffin. He also streams. We raid him. He raids us all the time. Man, I was so pissed at myself because there was one night he and I were supposed to meet up, and I just got completely distracted by the blog post. I'm working on it. I go get the kids in bed. I'm looking at stuff. And then finally I checked my messages and I saw I had missed him. I was like, fuck. So then we try like another night to get together, and he's used to West Coast time and not Central, and the time zone gets him all screwed up, and we completely missed that too. It sucked. However, I found out he lives up in Redmond, which is not very far from Seattle. So I can go visit him when next time I go up to Seattle. Hey, Samari, what's up, man? Wow, I'm out of my drink. Hold on. I gotta switch cups. There we go. So next time I'm up in the Seattle area, I'm gonna go hang out with him. Dude, it would have been so cool to get to hang out with you. I'm sad about that. I was apologizing to him so much. I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry that I missed that that one night we were supposed to go hang out that would have worked perfectly. I was very, very pissed at myself. But I'm glad it was a good time. How's the AI hacking tool going? It's going pretty well, man. We ran into a challenge where we're exhausting kind of the context and the throughput we can kind of shove up to Claude from the browser agent. So the browser agent was kind of hacked together and it did work as a proof of concept. I'm going back and I'm refining it now. So that way when it does the browser interactions, the context window will stay very clean and it's not going to get kind of schmattered with everything. Hey, Virus, what's up, man? Dude, we're just doing cybersecurity news tonight. And typically on the weekends, I'm doing a little coding project. We're working on an AI hacking bot to play like Try Hack Me and Hack the Box. And just having a good time with it. The exploitation agent, guys. Oh, it's so close. It is so close to being done. Oh, I could pay. Oh, if we didn't run into the issue with the browser agent, it would be done because it was directly identifying the PHP upload block in the web shell attack. And then it was attempting to do the renames. It's kind of, the pieces are kind of working in there. And then we usually hit some kind of an error where it's like a recursion limit in LangGraph, or we're hitting like a context exhaustion in the browser agent. Oh, it's so close. I can't wait. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, let's wrap this one up. I do like Munge's take on the security industry. He actually gives me a lot of food for thought about a lot of these things. Let's see. Thank you for your patience to stay for this long post. I don't know what this post would become when I started writing it. I saw a thematic opportunity to talk about curb roasting and advocate for offensive security. I didn't expect until I sat with the details that the Ascension breach, Senator Wyden's pressure, Microsoft's actions on curb roasting, and the DMSA debacle were all connected events. Much of the post is about security discourse and the blame game that goes along with it. What I hope you saw with each reveal of new information was a shifting concept of blame and moral responsibility. Whose actions led to this preventable tragedy? Whose actions or inactions contributed to the tragedy? The initial narrative focused on the contractor and how their one-click honest mistake led to the downfall of Ascension. Some pointed figures at Ascension speculating that they did not take actions to prevent this foreseeable harm. Of course, we don't know what actions Ascension did or didn't take. It's not public information. We know nothing about their security maturity or IT baseline. If we did, we might have a chance to evaluate Ascension's defense in depth and ask ourselves what was missing or what didn't work. This information doesn't exist, though. I think this is the industry being self-protective. And it is. You know, companies want to save face. They don't want to look as bad as they are, right? But if we knew this information, breach after breach, we might find that many organizations do the responsible thing and organized crime still succeeds. Senator Wyden's letter brought Microsoft into the exercise, and Senator Wyden asserts because Microsoft failed to warn their customers or address these issues, they are blameworthy too. Hey, Noah P, what's up, man? Replace all the pen testers who needs a job nowadays? No, man. Actually, I was thinking about something, and I think there's some very intentional limitations that I'm going to put into Hackbot for just that very reason, because I don't want people to think that it's going to be a penetration testing tool. It's going to be... Actually, there's some extra functionality I'm considering that I am going to add, but a little bit down the line, where it's almost going to, because I didn't want people to just download it and plug it in and be like, oh yeah, look at my Hack the Box score. It's going so awesome. What I wanted is to educate people with it and educate myself. I'm trying to understand how those agentic systems work and evolve and some of the tricks you might do with them and some of the tricks that might come up to break them. As a part of that, what I'm thinking about doing is adding in a retrieval augmented generation pipeline into the system where specialty agents can actually have like their own knowledge set that gets ingested into the RAG pipeline. I'll have to do some trickery with that, but it's doable. The idea being there is that then we can basically have kind of like a teaching mode in here where you can basically have like a chat with the agent and have it kind of guide you through and explain what's going on and what it's doing. Now, it won't be perfect, right? Because it's going to get things wrong. It's going to look at wrong stuff. It's probably going to hallucinate. But I thought it would be a cool way to try and explain the steps as it's going through. You don't always have somebody to come sit down with you and walk through Hack the Box. Sure, you can go watch IPSEC, and I love IPSEC. I think he's got a fantastic channel, and he was helpful to me, like even way back in the day. But at the same time, having something where you can interactively go try things and test them out, I think is also very, very helpful. So that's another like big milestone idea. We got to hit milestone 1, which is get all the primary agents and Stinger functional and put a human in the loop in there. That's going to be milestone 1. Milestone 2 will be implementing the RAG augmentation. So that way, if you want to have that extra information and then the teaching mode as part of that. I think that'll make Hackbot really cool. Let's see. I'm taking the CompTIA Network Plus in 3 weeks. I heard it's really useful to have even if for cybersecurity practitioners. Yes, dude. The Net Plus is not all that complicated, but having a very firm grasp of networking will help ease a lot of other issues that you're going to come across, because if you really firmly understand the network, a lot of times you're not going to be blaming the network incorrectly, right? Sometimes it is the network, don't get me wrong, especially if you're doing offensive operations and like maybe you're proxying over a C2 or something. Yeah, it can definitely be that. However, if you don't understand it, you're always going to possibly be blaming the network when you shouldn't. So having that idea kind of brings down the false positive rate of blaming the network. Makes it so you can focus on the other areas. Let's see. Let's finish this up real quick. The cybersecurity culture of blame and moral outrage is why its narratives omit details, encourage deflection, and repeat easy answers. Players either feed this ugly or withdrawn altogether, or players either feed this ugly or withdraw altogether because it's no-win discourse. I understand that, man. There's a lot of times I just don't argue with folks because I know they're so set. They've already made up their mind. They're not open to new information. I just don't even argue with them. It's a waste of my time, and my time is precious to me. There's no sober ground truth in cybersecurity, even though the frequency, scale, and repeated patterns of failure suggest a systemic cybersecurity failure rather than persistent one-off cases of organizations' negligence or incompetence. No, Gumby. I almost blamed Gumby. Gumby, it's not always the network. It's always DNS. DNS is not the network. It's a protocol on the network. If I were playing the blame game, I would point at this broken discourse. I started my commercial offensive security work in the Windows XP era. Back then, cybersecurity was a staid cost center with established players. Since then, we've had technical improvements, cybersecurity has become a large industry, and society feels that stakes and consequences of our work. Yet, in this climate of innovation, resources, and buy-in, a single click from a contractor can collapse the IT of a large healthcare system. That's the narrative? It's like saying a skyscraper collapsed because someone left a window open. The problem isn't the click, it's the vacuum of information that no one questions. Let's see. For the security discourse, who is to blame isn't the right question. Instead, we should look at breaches systematically with the full ground truth and ask a different question. For each contributing factor, viewed as a system, who was the most leverage to act to prevent future criminal successes? Active Directory privilege escalation is a root cause cybersecurity issue, and Microsoft alone has the leverage to act on this in a systemic way. While I do not believe Microsoft perpetuates Active Directory privilege escalation to sell security products, I would like them to own Active Directory privilege escalation as a product flaw and action it to give their customers a fighting chance. I applaud Senator Wyden for adding weight to this downplayed part of the security conversation. And to Yuval Gordon and Tim Medin, offensive security researchers out there, thank you for bringing these issues to light. You did your job, and we couldn't have this discussion without your insight. Boom! Disclosures. I was a cybersecurity researcher and entrepreneur until I stepped away from the industry in 2021. The above are my opinions. I don't speak for any projects, companies, yada yada. I own stock in Fortra and Spectre Ops. I didn't know that. Fuck DNS. Is being overly easy to configure or to misconfigure a flaw? Not necessarily, but it means it's easy to introduce flaws, right? Have recovered news about the 100,000 SIM card memes. I haven't seen the memes behind it, but yeah, we covered that last week. In fact, if you're curious about it, there's actually on Last Week in Security on the Bad Sector Labs blog, the very first one was about that, but it was a statement from the U.S. Secret Service, and we'd already kind of covered it. I did a quick scan of it. I didn't see any new information come from it. I mean, we can go take a quick peek at it. Let's see. So they were located throughout New York. They conducted multiple telecommunication-related threats directed at U.S. government officials, which represent an imminent threat to the agency's protective operations. The protective intelligence investigation led to the discovery of 300 co-located SIM servers and 100,000 SIM cards across multiple sites. I think a lot of people they juxtapose these two values here. These were 300 SIM servers, but they were constantly swapping out the SIM cards. So a lot of them say like it was 100,000 SIM connections or whatever, but really it was 300 servers, but they had a bunch of SIM cards on standby that they could swap in. That was the issue. Let's see. So in addition to carry out anonymous telephone threats, these devices could be used to conduct a wide range of telecommunications attacks. These included disabling cell phone towers, enabling denial of service, yada yada. At least they said it could be used, right? There was a lot of talk about this, like, hey, they could have done all this. I was like, yeah, but really from all the structure, everything, they were probably just trying to do, like, comms under the radar. That's really it. Yeah. In fact, he actually had a message here. Within 35 miles puts them really far away from the UN headquarters in New York City. Probably just standard SIM spam farm. Yeah. Let me see if I can I blow this up? It does, but it kind of hides everything in here. But yeah, so this is where it was located. I don't know where the UN headquarters are, but this was about the radius that it could cover. So I don't know. I don't have anything for reference in here about where the UN headquarters were. And the distance that it said it could have reached the UN headquarters was a theoretical distance. So when we covered this last week, I talked about that. I said, in reality, trying to get that kind of a range in a dense urban environment, probably not likely. They were probably limited to just taking a swag here, scientific wild ass guess. They were probably limited to about 10 miles at best, because those signals don't like to propagate through sheetrock, plaster, metal, window, everything else in that environment. I almost said windows, but yeah. Inverse square law much? I know, right? Let's see. Good stuff from Munch. I like it. One sec, guys. All right, I'm back. I think I need to dust my office, man. Every time I get on the stream, it like just goes nuts. Gumby, what is this spam you're linking me here? Oh, where the UN headquarters is? Okay, hang on. You sent the longest link ever possible. Let me see if we can... I guess this was centered around where because I did zoom to address, right? And I guess it's right here. So if it was within 35 miles, I mean, you're talking about like it puts it way out here, partially in the Atlantic, right? Let's see. Actually, let me do something real quick. I'm going to save those two articles for later. Maybe I'll use these to work on Saturday's video. I'm going to try something different this week, and that is I'm actually going to make a script for Saturday's video rather than just cutting up the live stream. I always felt that cutting up the live stream was kind of like cheating. I didn't like to do it, but I'm trying to get a video out every Saturday. So I'm actually going to try and actually make a script to cover like this information and what happens with it. This is hilarious too. This ransomware negotiation and response. Oh yeah, we're up on. I've got YouTube videos, and I've been dropping videos every Saturday now for the last 3 weeks. I've been trying very hard to get a video out every Saturday. It's just at BlaiseBit Cypher. I guess I need to make a YouTube command in Nightbot. You're killing me, Smalls. There, I'm the Nightbot now. Which is funny because I just posted that into the chat, and so it sends the YouTube link to the YouTube channel. So I really want to look into this ransomware negotiation and response services. I'm not familiar with Nightline security, but I want to go take a look at this because it's funny how many fields kind of come into this. All right, this next one's a two-parter we're going to cover real quick. Let's see. Is this bad? This feels bad. Fortress Go Anywhere exploit. CVE 2025 100 or 10,035. Damn. We're already up to 10,000. That's nuts. Let's see. And this is from the guys over at Watchtower, which these are the same guys I'm thinking about. Yeah, they write hilarious blog posts. Diablo 4 is lagging? That's a DNS problem. Era of AI research, sleepless agents. I know, right? Let's see. Let's take a look at this. So what was this exploit in? Let's see. Go Anywhere? File transfers used to be fun and simple. Fire up your favorite FTP client, log in to the site, and you're done. Fast forward to 2025, the exact same act requires a procurement team, a web interface, and vendor proudly waving their secure by design pledge. You ever seen the GI FTPD developers on the list of pledge signers? Exactly. Ah, jeez. Sorry, guys. My nose is freaking killing me. Give me 1 sec. All right, I'm back. Guess who's back? I don't know what I need to do, but I need to dust in my office or something. I like secure by design. I thought it was a very elegant approach. Secure by design and secure by demand go hand in hand. Yeah, exactly, man. Hang on, I'm doing something noisy. I don't want to blast y'all's ears out. All right. Let's see. All right, so welcome back to another Watchtower lab analysis. This time we're dissecting CVE 2025-10035 with a perfect CVSS 10 vulnerability of Fortress Go Anywhere MFT. Ooh, I do love a CVSS 10. Although, I'll tell you one thing, Speaking of YouTube videos, I was looking at the analytics just before the stream, and I was actually really disappointed that what I thought was kind of a dumb video, which was the AI on AI violence video, has 10 times the view that covering Dirk John's massive authentication bypass in Azure has. And I know I talked about that on Sunday, but it still blows my mind. That was quite literally a world-ending exploit that he found and disclosed and got fixed by Microsoft very, very quickly. And so the long and short of it is, for anybody who didn't watch the video, I don't blame you, or wasn't here for last week's news stream, what happened was there was a authentication bypass mechanism that allowed you to jump from one tenant to another and impersonate other people in the tenant using something called actor tokens. And it wasn't well documented, and it was using a legacy API of the Microsoft graph, or of the Azure AD graph instead of the Microsoft graph, because Microsoft loves backwards compatibility, as we were just talking about in the previous article. And Dirk John, who studies everything security related to Entra and Azure, found this wicked bypass that could have allowed you to take over any tenant in the entire world. I mean, pretty much, and there was some speculation about if that stretched to like the gov tenants or not. But he didn't test it. He only tested it in his environments. And then eventually Microsoft cut him a CVE for it. It was only rated at a 9. Eventually they did come back and revise it to a 10. But also, this should tell you something, like this CVSS score is not perfect, because this is a CVSS 10. You go and exploit this, you get access to one entity. You go and exploit what Dirk John had, you had access to every Azure tenant. I would have hacked the FBI. Remember, there's rules of chat. First rule is don't hack your fellow viewers. The second rule is don't talk about everybody in chat is a Fed. Rule number 3 is don't talk about anything legal. See rule number 2. Let's see. So anyway, this had a nice 10 score to it, which is as bad as it gets. For the uninitiated, Go Anywhere is a secure managed file transfer solution that automates and protects data exchange across enterprises, trading partners, and critical applications. So it's not your friend's photo sharing setup. We're talking Fortune 500 deployments with over 20,000 instances exposed to the internet. Ooh, nice. A playground APT groups dream about. Yeah, they do. It's not illegal to hack yourself. True, it's not. Let's see. Go Anywhere has a history, though. In 2023, the Clop ransomware gang turned a CVSS into a pre-auth command injection for the licensing response servlet into a widespread compromise. This year was the year MFT exploitation trauma across multiple vendors turned into the memory of defenders everywhere. As always, and you'll read, we have an inner feeling, call it an instinct, that there was more to this vulnerability than we were not being told. Game over, man. Game over. On Thursday, September 18th, Fortran published a security advisory titled Deserialization Vulnerability in Go Anywhere's MFT License Servlet. The title itself is reason for alarm, with the description going further to explain how we likely got the CVSS 10 score. A deserialization vulnerability in the license servlet of Fortran's Go Anywhere MFT allows an actor with a validly forged license response signature to deserialize an arbitrary actor-controlled object, possibly leading to command injection. So if we look at the previous CVE from 2013, it feels kind of familiar, which was Go Anywhere's MFT suffers from a pre-authentication command injection vulnerability in the license response servlet due to deserializing an arbitrary attacker-controlled object. But Watchtower, how did this get a CVSS 10? The advisory clearly states meaningful hurdles for attack traverse. Exploitation of this vulnerability is highly dependent upon systems being externally exposed to the internet. Fortran should the advisory note also note that the solution needs to be that it needs to be running? Yeah, I mean the whole purpose is it's supposed to be exposed out to the internet. So in the wild exploitation, let's play a game. The above sometimes happens when vendors update references attached to a CVE. In this case, was it FI 2025-001 was deleted and 12 was added in its place. In the 12 section was appended an innocent MI impacted section. Typically, not always, when a vulnerability receives in-the-wild exploitation, clarity to customers is provided to help inform prioritization and remediation process expectations. Fortune's advisory never says, we've seen this exploit in the wild. What they do say is more curious. Check your admin audit logs for signed object.getObject in exception traces, and if you see it, you were likely affected. Affected as in vulnerable? Or affected as like in the fox is already in the henhouse? To determine if you're affected, Fortra provides IOCs for this ambiguous statement, this ambiguously stated vulnerability. So the advisory, number 12, included a stack trace which appears in your logs should you be affected by the vulnerability. Oh, how nice. Of course it's written in Java. Why not? Just Java. It runs on everything. So we know Fortra wouldn't be ambiguous on purpose, though, because CISA's Secure by Design pledge, which Fortra signed up to, talks about transparency around ITW explanations, or exploitations, in the wild exploitation. That's what that means. Let's look at the stack server real quick. Let's see. So the one they mentioned is signed object get object. Let's see. What are they doing here? So at Ligma GA UI admin servlet, license response server, license API controller, bundle worker, unbundle, verify, and then we have unknown source from signed object get object. Let's see. So they're posting something to it. They try to get a response. They try to unbundle it and verify it. That's probably where the deserialization actually happens. And then it probably triggers this, if I had to guess. Let's see. What's your opinion on data analysts as an entry point for cybersecurity while working on a pen test route? I'm of two minds about it. I'm thinking about the way some other organizations might look at that as far as hiring and versus how I would look at it as far as hiring. I had a pretty, not in depth, but I had a way of, when I was interviewing folks, kind of unraveling the sweater, let's call it, where I would ask very pointed questions with technical details. And then I would, as they gave me information, I would just start pulling on it a little bit and seeing how much of the sweater I could unravel. Basically, figuring out how much bullshit they were peddling. And I even came up with like just a very simple question that eliminated a lot of people applying for an entry-level penetration tester position. And I don't want to give that question away because I think it's a really good one. And it's a simple question with a lot of answers. And depending on how you answer it, you can kind of easily tell what's their comfort and their skill level with just basic penetration testing. Anyway, but I would do that a lot as they were coming in and I would work on it. Now, if I saw somebody who had a data analyst background, I think that was pretty cool, but I'd also know that it's not directly applicable to offensive security. So I would want to maybe scrutinize their questions a tiny bit more. I don't see it being a problem. I think if it's a good job and you're working with technical assets, which you're going to be if you're doing a data analyst, so you're going to be overall improving your technical skill set, and you're still using that while you're working on other stuff, I think it's a great thing. Plus, if you're getting paid, getting paid is a good thing. I hack for free, but I charge my customers for the report. That's the kicker. It's like, I will hack you for free all day long. But if you want to know how I did it, then you got to cough up the money. So the challenge there might be, would be prepared for the inevitable question of, why are you making the switch into security? And you could tell them straight up, hey, this was a stopgap so I could afford to eat, because I do like to eat. I like having a place to live. And I was using that while I was in the evenings studying for this eventual move. Another thing you could do to like really drive the point home, Noipi, is talk about things you have learned in the experience and the knowledge you've synthesized doing being a data analyst and bringing that over into the security conversation, particularly on the offensive side, because it's an area that's notoriously difficult to get data to prepare. Exactly, because I started throwing resumes as data analysts at well. Good idea. CVSS 10 with world-ending Azure AD exploit. Snore. Give me AI on the violence. Give me death. Yeah, being able to afford groceries is always a good thing. Let's see, if a system would be turned off, it would be impenetrable. True. That's part of the old meme that the only way to truly defend a system is to turn it off. There's always going to be some new exploit in there. Speaking of which, I don't know if it made the news in here. Let me see. It did not, but let's see. Hold on. One of the guys actually sent me this on Discord, and This is my buddy. So over in Hacker News, CISA sounded alarm on critical pseudo flaw actively exploited in Linux and Unix systems. And this actually came from my buddy Rich right here. He's a good buddy of mine. I literally talk to him every single day, and he's really cool. If you guys are interested in this kind of stuff where he's doing like vulnerability research and looking into it and kind of what's his methodology, I can totally get him on the stream. We've talked about it before. I just didn't know when would be a good time to do it. Maybe if it's looking like a slow news week or something, I'll bring him on there. Nah, I'd rather like have it scheduled out in advance. He is a just absolutely smart guy. He collects CVEs like they're freaking Pokemon. And that's part of the reasons why I tell him he's just collecting snitch points. So, absolutely smart guy. Love him to death. I worked with him for 5 years, and like I said, I talk to him on the daily. To do it for sure. Okay. I think if I'm going to do that, maybe we'll skip like the Wednesday night news stream 1 week, and I'll see if he wants to come on. I'll talk to him about it. Yeah. And plus, it's a chance for you guys to come in and ask questions too. So like, if you're interested in this field and it's something you really want to explore, you guys can ask questions. Okay, I'll talk to him about it. I know Gumby's chomping at the bit for it, but I suspect other people are too. I was thinking about going back as an electrician just to pay the bills. I'm just worried because it's a physically demanding job and I wouldn't have the time to study after work because I'll be tired. I understand that, man. Because my brother's a plumber, my father-in-law is a plumber. My brother was an electrician too. For a while, he kind of hops around the trades, and yeah, dude, I totally get that. Where at the end of the day, you're just physically wrecked, and it's mentally draining on you. So it's like, how are you going to have the ability to do that? So yeah, I totally get that. One of the good things about working in something like that, or even in the data analyst position, is that yeah, the data analyst position is technical and allows you to kind of move towards that. It's honestly going to be like better for you. If you ultimately need to go through and do the electrician thing, what I'd recommend is go ahead and do it, get it going. While you're there, just bust as much ass as you can to get done, quickly. Get it knocked out. Maybe even work out where you can get paid by the job instead of get paid by the hour. And then once you're done with that, go home, take a shower, take a shower, take a nap. Maybe even eat first, depending on if you've gotten to eat. So eat something, take a shower, take a nap. No more than 45 minutes for the nap. What that does is it successfully partitions your day off. It breaks it up to, I was in electrician mode. I have now had proper nutrition. I am clean. I am rested. Let's go hack some stuff until I have to go to bed. That's something I try to do with varying amounts of success, but I try to kind of partition my day that way. Part of the reason why I don't do a lot of Hack the Box and Try Hack Me on the stream is because I do that day to day, and it's too similar to what I do on my daily grind. It just feels like an extended work day for me. Part of the reason why I was like, okay, I want to experiment with it. I started working on Hackbot. It's useful for what I'm doing at work, but also it is far enough removed that it doesn't feel exhausting, if that makes sense. There's not a ton of overlap between the two. Preaching turning it off and on again approach on humans. You're not wrong though, Samaria. Yes. Hello, Brain. Have you tried turning it off and on again? Yeah. All right, let's see here. So what do we got for this server off bypass? Let's see. So it contains an insecure desynchronization vulnerability, and according to the CVSS score, it's reachable without authentication. Boom. That's actually something that's that's a good point. You're not going to get to a 10 usually without it being unauthenticated, so that's a good sign to it. And if you ever wonder about that, I mean, we've covered this before, but just as a reminder, and if you're looking at the CVSS calculator here, you've got a couple of different options in here. And what this will do is, let's say, if it has to be a 10, it's got to be network reachable, low complexity, no privileges required, no user interaction. Let's see. And then the impact on the CIA triad has to be high, and the scope has to change. right? That's what gets you a 10. If any of these change right here, so if it goes to unchanged, it's a 9.8. Still high, but it's not a 10. All this stuff has to be at the worst possible setting. Now you get this thing right here called your CVSS vector, right? And it just corresponds to each of these vectors in here. So attack vector, network. Let me see if can I blow that up any? I can kind of make it a little bigger. Attack vector, network. Attack complexity, low. Privileges required, none. So if you're just curious, like, hey, what's an unauth CVE that might be coming out? Go look at the CVSS vector. If it says privileges required, none, you know it's an unauth exploit. You don't need any kind of privileges or any kind of authentication to go exploit that system. All right, let's keep going with this. Let's see. So first things first, could we actually hit the servlet and trigger the deserialization routine without credentials? To answer that, we need to crack open the code. So the licensed servlet lives in com, ligma, GA, UI, admin, servlet, license response servlet, and it's exposed in this REST API endpoint. So if we look at the entry point, we see a whole bunch of code I'm not going to read because I hate Java. But I do like how they've got the notes in here. So the servlet retrieves the bundle parameter from the HTTP request. It extracts the string from our URL, which is a GUID that defines our license request token. It calls session utilities is license request token valid to validate the user supplied license token. That's probably where this deserialization happens. Let's see. If the check at 3 passes, servlet calls get response and the bundle parameter. So how does a token validation, which is a GUID, actually work? Servlet takes the GUID token extracted, compares the token to the token that is stored in the user session. If both tokens match, the validation is successful and execution proceeds over to the get response. If the token doesn't match, the flow stops and we never reach the deserialization code. Okay. So without a valid token tied to the user session, we can't even begin to reach the vulnerable deserialization routine. Interesting. So there's obviously a way around this, right? They're teasing the plot because we already know there's no authentication material required. Because you hate Java, you might as well just say you hate the 90s. I did hate the 90s. I loved the 80s, though. 80s were great. 90s were okay. 80s were awesome. All right. So kicker here is there's got to be some way to either get that token or forge that token. Let's see. So if your Go Anywhere MFT instance has no license applied, it's trivial. You can head straight to the endpoint and start the activation procedure with the valid token applied to your session. However, this is not a production reality where licenses are inevitably provided. It's not that simple. Typically, and in such a case, you need to authenticate to generate a valid license request token and attach it to your session. So the vulnerability has a perfect 10 score, so logically there must be a way to obtain the token without any authentication. So for our analysis, that led us to the unlicensed.xhtml endpoint, where we discovered a few important items. So we can bypass authentication requirements for this endpoint by appending /x or any other invalid data to the endpoint like so. Oh, that's funny. So we need the endpoint to trigger an exception, for example, by providing an invalid view state. So what we do is we use this URL, we use Java faces view state, and we provided some information here. Okay. So because in doing so, the application then flows to the admin error handler servlet. Oh, I was wrong. That was not where the other one was. Nothing like 80s hair? I know, right? Let's see. So the code checks whether the requested URL begins with unlicensed XHTML. If it does, the application generates a valid license request token and attaches it to the session. And then finally, the token is passed to the license utility request online activation. So this method builds a redirect URL to the Go Anywhere license server, embedding the license request inside an HTTP GET bundle parameter. Nice. So for anyone who doesn't live or breathe Go MFT's license process, the license request does two things. Stores a serialized Java object containing the license request token. It's encrypted with a hard-coded key and partially compressed for good measure. So an attacker can simply send Go Anywhere license XHTML. I love that the throwaway value they put in here is watchtower. And an invalid view state even, which was watchtower. And they just request and activate. So the server redirects to and returns a bundle parameter, which is the license request, plus a cookie where they generated the token has been attached. Let's see. Yeah, so that's just our bundle value right there. So because the encryption key is hard-coded, the bundle parameter value could be decrypted offline to recover the embedded GUID. Excellent. Love those hard-coded keys. So using the said GUID, we're then able to interact with the license servlet without actually authenticating. This reminds me of a DVR system that I found during a penetration test. And as I was researching it, I found what is probably the most Hollywood of Hollywood hacks ever. And that was, there was a local file inclusion where you could actually go read the user's database from the DVR. And when you did that, you got a list of the users and their password hashes. Now you might think, okay, cool, let's go crack those hashes. You didn't have to. You could literally just do like a pass the hash with the hash from the database or from whatever this file was that you recovered from the DVR and send it directly to that system. That was it. It was so bad. Oh, that's funny. So the authentication bypass portion of the vulnerability is done, so let's move on. So what about the insecure deserialization? So now that we can obtain the GUID token unauthenticated, we can then reach the deserialization sink that's vulnerable. Hey Manny, what's up, man? How you figured out to pass the hash? It was already a known exploit for the system, and most DVRs never get updated. They get put on the network and just forgotten about. They're usually not in like any kind of asset inventory. They're not managed by any kind of central management system like Entra or Active Directory, anything like that. And so they just get forgotten about, and they just kind of linger there in whatever state they're in, and then as time progresses forward, vulnerabilities get found and published, and this was just a published exploit in it. Yeah, man, I'm doing pretty good, man. My office is freaking dusty today. It's driving my nose crazy. It's weird. So my work desk is right here. It's just like 6 feet off to my left. But my personal desk where I do the stream and my work desk are adjacent to each other. I did not have any trouble with allergies or anything until I start the stream, and then all of a sudden my nose just goes crazy. All right, let's see. So for the sake of our sanity, we're going to skip the majority of the code and leave you with two basic facts that you need to know. So the bundle parameter carries a serialized Java object that the server decrypts during processing. The decryption uses a hard-coded key, so the bundle parameter values are recoverable offline. Processing eventually reaches the Ligma bundle work verify, where the application hands us the raw input byte array derived from the bundle. In short, an attacker-controlled serialized object reaches server-side deserialization logic. Nice. Gotta love those deserializations. Something's got to happen as soon as you press the go live record button. Yeah, exactly. I don't know what it is. Bright lights can actually have an effect on your nose? Well, that would make sense because I've got two bright key lights up here shining down on me. It's like I'm looking at Jesus' teeth up here. I don't know if it's dry air, Gumby, just because it's the same office. It's the same air. The same fans are even on. The office gets too dang hot, so I've got a fan at the door pulling the cold air from the rest of the house into the office. Let's see. He kind of goes through what the signed object here is and like what Java objects you're actually kind of injected to. So according to the Java documentation, what's a signed object here? So the signed object is a class for the purpose of creating authentic runtime object whose integrity cannot be compromised without being detected. So more specifically, a signed object contains another serializable object, the to-be signed object, and its signature. So in simple terms, a signed object is just a raptor, my favorite dinosaur, but anyway. It stores a serialized object inside a signature calculated over the stream with a private key alongside it. So the class also provides a few helper methods, which is verify or the get object method. So with code entry 3 up here, which is get object. The code will call get object on a deserialized sign object, immediately allowing the attacker to deliver a serialized sign object, which internally stores a malicious serialized object, like the one based on Common Bean Utils 1's gadget, and go anywhere will deserialize the object, and that's it. Nice. So we missed something though. The code checks the signature of our serialized object against a public key baked into Go Anywhere. On paper, that's sensible. Signature validation is handled by Bouncy Castle and FIPS APIs. So the final barrier to the pre-auth RCE is bypassing the signature check. But here's the problem. We don't know how, really. Either we're missing a trick or the check is genuinely solid. So we tried using several private keys shipped in Go Anywhere to generate a valid signature. None of them matched the public key in play. We reviewed the JavaScript code responsible for the signature verification. We also tried chasing alternative code paths that might deserialize without needing the check. All of them failed. So one might think, just diff the patch, you dummies. Here's the kicker, though. The patch does harden the deserialization routine, but the signature verification logic is untouched. So what they did is, over here, they've got the original code and then what the mitigating patch was. And they're looking at what's the difference between the two. And so the code to verify was not touched up here. So the patch doesn't amend the signature at all. Instead, it only changes the deserialization flow, replacing the get object with a custom wrapper called deserialize untrusted signed object. The idea seemed to add another layer of safety around deserialization. We get a few conspiracy theories, though, all of which have absolutely zero evidence and are completely conjecture. Let's see. Regardless, feel free to pick the one that fits your mood. Which is we're dummies, the vendor got popped, or the vendor accidentally signed to evil. Good luck with that. Let's see. So fueling our conspiracy theories was the advisory deletion and reference update we discussed above, including a stack trace which signals the valid exploitation attempt and asks the user to check their logs. All right? So in our opinion, typically vendors who produce, whose products are facing in the wild exploitation, but we're not experts, it's all a mystery. We can't see the path to exploit without a valid private key. On paper, this should kill the bug dead. On the other hand, this has a perfect 10 CVSS score, so the vendor published IOCs which validate that it's likely. Let's see. So they had a TLDR side. Let's see. No mystery is complete without a few unanswered questions. Despite our usual routine of reverse engineering and creative detours, we ended up with more questions than usual. All right, let's go to part 2, though. But wait, there's more. Let's see. So this was from the next day. I guess they figured it out. We're back just over 24 hours later to share the evolving understanding of whatever the CVE number was. Thanks to everybody who reached out after part 1, especially the individual who shared credible intel that informed this update. In part 1, we laid out a couple of odd behaviors. We'll skip those for now. Since part 1, we've been given credible evidence of the in-the-wild exploitation for Fortran Go Anywhere, dating back to September 10th. So that's 8 days before Fortran's public advisory published on the 18th. This explains why Fortran later decided to publish limited IOCs, and we're now urging defenders to immediately change how they think about timeline and risk. So an individual sent us evidence of exploitation activity that aligns with the stack traces shown in Fortran. Hey Sonny, what are DMs and how do I slide into them? I think they did figure it out, Samaria. I think that's why they have a part 2 here. So the stack trace related to exploitation and the creation of a backdoor account are both present in the data we received or reviewed. We can't publish everything, but the core signals are clear. Unauthorized bundle from invalid session, AAA. Interesting. Then we also had admin user, admin go, updated admin user, admin go. So they added a backdoor account here. So below we have summarized in the sequence of exploitation and follow-on activity observed in the wild. The threat actors triggered the pre-auth deserialization vulnerability in Go Anywhere's MFT, achieving remote code execution. With the RCE, they created a Go Anywhere user, a backdoor admin account named admin go. The admin go account using the admin go account, they created a web user. Now they have a legitimate access to the solution itself. And via that new user, the threat actor uploads and executes multiple secondary payloads. Nice. So this incredibly disappointing situation, Fortran had a chance to honor the Secure by Design pledge and be transparent about the in-the-wild exploitation, but instead they decided otherwise. So the reality is really simple. This leaves security teams scrambling to assess risk and decide whether to assume continued exposure or to treat this as a prompt for a full incident response and forensic review. Dang it, so they haven't figured it out yet. I'm going to keep an eye on this. Hopefully they will. So they still haven't got an idea. I find this interesting though. Unauthorized bundle from invalid session AAA. So they're obviously crafting a custom bundle, but either there's another deserialization that the Watchtower guys might have missed. I don't know how. There's either maybe a code path that they missed, but I doubt it because these guys are very good at what they do. Or there's some kind of an issue with the signature that allows it to be bypassed. I can't wait to see where they come up with this. I'm on pins and needles now. Damn it, I thought they had figured it out. They're leaving me wanting. All right. But there was another one in here I wanted to look at. Let's see. This is from the guys over at Synactive. Let's see. The Phantom extension. Backdooring Chrome through uncharted pathways. Nice. Let's see. Chromium extensions are modules that allow users to customize and enhance their browsing experience. Built with the same technologies as web pages we visit every day, they interact with the browser through a set of well-defined APIs. So thanks to these mechanisms, extensions can introduce new features, modify the content or behavior of existing web pages, or integrate seamlessly with third-party services. Their use cases range from productivity tools to ad blockers. Yeah, ad blockers. No malvertising for me. As well as advanced integration designed for developers and power users. Web browsers have evolved far beyond the simple tool for accessing content. It's become a true work platform, comparable to a lightweight operating system. I hate that. I hate that that's true so much. Naturally, this central role makes it a prime target for attackers, further underlining the importance of securing it effectively. So our research initiated on Chrome version 130 and valid up to the latest release available at the time of writing introduces a backdooring and post-exploitation technique. So by leveraging a simple disk write primitive, it becomes possible to silently install custom extensions on Chromium-based browsers deployed within Windows. Let's see, so let's look at the anatomy of the extension. So browser extension is fundamentally composed of several key parts that define its structure. You have a manifest.json, which is the core configuration of every extension. It provides essential metadata such as the name, version, and permissions, and specifies which scripts to run in different contexts. So background or content scripts where HTML is rendered. It serves as the blueprint to define the entire extension structure. Then you have a service worker scripts. The background JavaScript runs independently of any web page and has extensive access to Chrome extension APIs. It enables the extension to manage browser settings, handle network requests, communicate with other extension components, and perform sensitive actions such as intercepting network traffic, capturing screenshots, or accessing all cookies. Then we have content scripts. So these are JavaScript files that get injected into a specific web page as defined by the manifest.json. Running within the page's context, they can interact directly with the DOM, allowing them to read, modify, or manipulate page content, and they can be used for such tasks as altering the page appearance, injecting forms, or scraping data, including credentials stored in local or session storage. We can also do HTML files for pop-ups. Extensions can also include HTML files to create a user interface. These interfaces are commonly used for like pop-ups or new tab pages or even for options in there. Let's see. So browser extensions operate within the Chrome environment and have direct access to its APIs. This allows them to interact with data that the browser processes, including information that might otherwise be protected by app-bound encryption at the operating system level. So this is important right here because if you, we talked about it before, but for anybody who doesn't know, Chrome used to use the Data Protection API, DP API, or as I like to call it, DPAPI, in Windows, which was handling data encryption for systems. The problem is if you compromise the operating system, then you can compromise DPAPI and get the encryption keys out. So Chrome, a couple versions back, started doing what's called app-bound encryption, where they handle their own encryption inside the Chrome process. So what that means is if I, as an attacker, get onto a system and I want to dump out all the information from Chrome, what I need to do, or like particularly for cookies, there's other stuff you can get. I actually need to find a way to inject over into Chrome to access that encryption key into the Chrome process, access that encryption key, and then I can go decode all the information. So it makes it a little bit more troublesome, but there's lots of guys working on interesting tradecraft for that. I need to actually go check up on that because I'm not 100% on the new stuff. Let's see. So as the browser itself handles the decryption for its normal operations, consequently, loaded extensions can access and manipulate sensitive data such as those credentials, intercept network traffic, redirect users, and even capture screen content. So extensions are typically distributed in special packages with a CRX extension. A CRX file is just a zipped archive containing all the extension's files. digitally signed to ensure its integrity and origin. Generally, Chrome extensions are installed through a couple of primary mechanisms, like the Chrome Web Store. You can also do unpacked or self-signed extensions, which is during development or testing, extensions can be loaded directly from a local folder rather than through the Chrome Web Store. And there's actually lots of extensions you can use to do stuff like this. So this is done by enabling the developer mode at the browser extension management page and selecting Load Unpacked. Pretty much. Alternatively, users can drag and drop a CRX package into the browser window to install it. Though if the package is self-signed and not from the official store, Chrome will show a warning or may block installation depending on whatever policies you've got in place. There's also a way to install them from the command line. So extensions can be loaded at browser startup by specifying the directory with the load extension flag. Let's see, starting from Chrome version 137 and above, the flag is disabled by default. So to re-enable this functionality and load an extension from the command line, you use an additional flag. Disable features equals disable load extension command line switch. That's funny that you can turn that back on. Although you'd expect this though. Okay, they realized the load extension flag could be abused horrifically. It probably isn't used for a lot of legitimate work, so they made it off by default, which is all we really wanted for RC4 for Kerberos. Anyway, so from an attacker's perspective, abusing Chrome Web Store is significantly more difficult due to Google's review and approval process. While techniques like obfuscation and WebAssembly can occasionally evade detection, the store still poses a far higher barrier compared to other forms of deployment methods such as a local installation or an enterprise mass deployment. The command line method, while functional, is a well-known technique. Its visibility in the fact that it has been disabled by default in recent Chrome versions makes it less suitable for stealthy and persistent operations. Furthermore, this method is frequently leveraged by malicious actors, including info stealers like Chrome Loader. All right, so let's look at the loading mechanisms. So, Chrome browser extensions are registered within specific user preference files on the Windows system. The files are located in the user's app data directory, serve as a configuration repository that enumerate installed extensions and their associated settings. Hey, Chris, what's up? Please don't kick me out of the Cool Kids Club. I'm about to upgrade to Windows 11. I'm not going to hold it against you. I'm just going to razz you about it. And if we ever get to meet up in person, I'm probably going to give you a pink belly about it. Just be forewarned. Let's see. So what do we got here? So in our app data, we've got security preferences, secure preferences, and then we have our preferences. So the choice between these files depends on the system's domain join status. Secure preferences is utilized on non-domain joined Windows devices, while preferences is used on domain joined environments. That's kind of funny. I wonder why. I just, at a gut check, I would have thought this would have been backwards, but okay. So below is the structure of the typical Chrome preference file, showing its core selection and the contents. So we do extensions, we have settings, whatever the extension hash is. And then we have protection settings for those extensions. This is probably like a cryptographic hash in here. Let's see. So the secure preferences file used on a non-domain joined computer shares a largely similar structure to the standard preference file, but includes an additional SuperMac JSON property at its root level. SuperMac. So successfully modifying these preference files requires addressing three challenges. We have to pre-calculate the extension hash, calculate a MAC for whatever the extension ID is, and we have to calculate the MAC for developer mode. Or calculate the MAC for a developer mode, so a new security measure introduced in recent versions. Let's see, so he goes over how do we actually get the extension hash. We do some crypto magic, that's what we do. Okay, cool. So the Python script below demonstrates how to generate an extension ID along with the corresponding public and private keys. Some nice Java or Python right here. Hold on one sec, guys. Sorry, I felt a sneeze coming. So the script generates a deterministic Chrome extension ID and its corresponding base64 public key. The key is added to the key property of the extensions in the manifest. All right, so how about the MAC calculations for bypassing the integrity check? So for an extension entry in the preferences file to be considered valid and loaded by Chrome, its associated MAC must be calculated correctly. The MAC acts as an integrity check, preventing arbitrary modification of the preferences. Let's see. So regarding MAC calculation, a 2020 research paper by Pablo Picasso Sanchez, Gerard Schneider, and Andre Sebelfeld, titled HMAC and Security Preferences, provided valuable insights into the HMAC calculation part. The research indicated that the seed used by Chrome for HMAC calculation is hard-coded within the resources.pack binary file. Oh, nice. Remarkably, despite the research being based on an older Chrome version, the described HMAC seed mechanism proved to still be valid even for Chromium version 139 at the time of this writing. Nice. So, let's see. For more precise identification for which specific file contains the seed value, PackUtil from the Google Research Internalization Tools can be used. Different analysis was performed to precisely identify the resource pack file containing the seed value. By extracting and comparing the contents of the original resource pack with a subtly modified version, we determined the file 146 held the key, or held that seed value. Interesting. All right, I'm going to skip over a lot of the crypto stuff here. So what about Chrome's enhanced developer mode security? So starting in Chrome 134, managing the developer mode UI toggle state has been tightened. Its status is now precisely controlled in the preferences file, specifically via the extension developer mode entry. It's important to note that if developer mode isn't enabled here, extensions can be registered, but they'll never actually load or become active. So the Boolean value being true or false controlling developer mode isn't just stored, it also needs to be signed with another message authentication code, probably an HMAC. Just like the registration to the extension itself. So our research revealed that a critical dependency here, the static seed used to correctly sign the developer mode property keys, generating its MAC, is the exact same one that underpins the system's overall extension integrity. Nice. So just so far from what I'm looking at with this, there's certain files that you need to touch on disk. And so like this resources pack, there's the preferences and secure preferences. So so far what I'm looking at, a detection you could put in for this is if you had processes that were not Chrome touching those files. That would be like one of the simple detections you could do with this. So while the aforementioned technique provides a method for silently loading the extensions, enterprise environments often implement security policies to restrict browser behavior. So a common control is the use of the Chrome policies typically enforced by group policy or GPO and Windows domains to control extension installation and execution. These policies can whitelist, blacklist, or entirely block extensions as well as developer mode. Organizations generally deploy Chrome administrative templates to configure these policies. So for example, the extension install allow list and extension install block list policies are frequently used to define the extensions that are prohibited or permitted or forbidden based on the extension hash. I wonder if that's like an exclusive allow list, like you can only install these ones that are allowed. Yeah, nice. Nice. Let's see. Technique 1, whitelisted extension hash spoofing. Oh? Are we spoofing or are we colliding? Let's read on. So recognizing that GPOs typically rely on extension hashes for whitelisting, we explored the possibility of spoofing the ID of a legitimate allowed extension. So the concept relies on the scenario where a specific extension hash, such as a corporate-approved plugin like Adobe Acrobat, is explicitly whitelisted by policy despite not being installed. As the Chrome extension identifier is deterministically derived from a base64 encoded RSA public key defined in the manifest. So an attacker could leverage this key material to produce the same Chrome extension identifier and deploy a modified version as an unpacked extension. Wait a second. So the Chrome extension identifier is deterministically derived from the base64 encoded RSA public key defined in the manifest. Hold on one second. Let me scroll back up here. In the manifest, did it actually have a spot for you to embed a key? Hold on. Do they have an example of the manifest? Let me see. Well, I'll be gee willikers, zippity doo dah, Batman. There it is. Okay, that seems like a massive oversight. So that the idea is coming from within. The call is coming from within the house. Oh, that's funny. So, okay, so here's the process for clearly structuring it. So you install a legitimate and allowed extension from the Chrome store. Retrieve the extension ID from the browser's extension page URL or the details. Extract the extension's public key attribute by inspecting its service worker console, or by downloading and analyzing the CRX package from the web store, or from the Google's update servers. Update the extension's manifest.json by setting the key attribute to the extracted public key, thereby spoofing the extension ID. Inject the modified extension into the browser's preferences and sign the Mac to complete the installation. RIP. That's horrible. That's horrible. That's terrible. So technique 2 was extension stomping. So we observed an interesting behavior when an unpacked extension was configured to spoof the identifier of an already installed one. In this scenario, Chromium gave priority to the unpacked version. Oh, that's even worse. Which replaced the legitimate web store extension in the extensions page. Nice. Nice. The behavior confirmed on both Chrome and Edge, as using the example of the Adobe PDF, shows the extension IDs collide. The browser favors locally loaded, unpacked extensions, providing a stealthy way to override the trusted one. So look at this. So here's the legit Adobe Acrobat, right? The ID is EFAID yada yada yada, right? And then their simple test extension has the exact same value right there. RIP. That's funny. Extension stomping. I love it. Let's see. What is this? Neutralizing GPO via the HKCU. This is the current user hive inside of Windows Registry. So the most effective method found for bypassing GPO and forced extension restrictions leveraged Windows group policy process ordering. So policies are applied in a specific sequence known as LSDOU. I actually wasn't familiar with this. I mean, I knew it was there. I didn't know there was a well-defined sequence. Local site domain organization. LSDO. So local group policies to the machine, site, Active Directory sites, Active Directory domains, and then OUs. Interesting. Cool. Learn something new every day. That's why I do these news streams. Chromium policies applied to the GPO are stored under the HKCU software policies keys. Let's see. So although this location within HKCU is protected from modification by standard users, but can be changed by anyone with admin privileges. So an attacker with admin privs can therefore modify, add, or delete entries in the extension allow list and the extension block list, allowing them to bypass the extension restrictions and compromise the enforcement. Nice. Nice. I love this. Let's see. Does it have any audio to it? Let's see if I can... see if I can do this. Ah, there we go. I can make it a little bit bigger here. All right, so they open up Chrome. They go to extensions, manage the extensions. They say I guess there's nothing in there. They're testing it against Chrome version 140. Let's see. What did that script actually do? Hold on. Let me go back a little bit. Okay, so here's they're executing this run01.sh. So what it does is whatever this they pass in the path to the extension. They have a username and password, a domain, which is the work group, and a target IP address. And they remove the available targets JSON. Let's see. For the extension loader, they check the target username and password for the domain. The extension loader signs the extension, and they exploit the target, I guess, with the new extension that they just created. I think that's what they're doing. So it looks like they were remotely dropping it on the system. I love that little evil emoji. So they put in a cloned version of Adobe Acrobat in here. A backdoored version. Oh, nice. Then they've integrated this into the chief command and control network. Excellent. We can get cookies. View details. Oh, this is lovely. Let's see. So they go to google.com, or yeah. Oh, that's cool. It actually captured a screenshot of like what's going on in the tab. You can also explore the file system. Excellent. I'd say probably one limitation to this is Chrome's not going to be running at high integrity, so you can probably browse a lot of the stuff on the disk, but you're probably not modifying or accessing anything super critical. But a lot of the times, you don't have to. And here they're showing an example of like getting their SSH key. Boom. Like I said, so a lot of times the stuff you need to access isn't in super critical parts of the operating system. You're after the user. You're after their material. Oh, that's awesome. He was also browsing local storage there. Yeah, this is sick, Gumby. Yes, go log in. Let me see what you do. Oh, that's awesome. So it made a copy of the form submission from the post request, and it showed the logger username and password. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. This is amazing. It's the best thing I've seen today. So hold on. So this demonstration uses our rootkit that highlights browser backdooring via extensions, featuring remote SMB-based deployment and custom command and control server. So did they release Chief yet? Let's see. Down here they say, for red teams, this technique provides a stealthy and persistent avenue for browser compromise and data exfiltration. Deployment's versatile, supporting remote loading over SMB, integration with existing OS-level implants, or leveraging projects like Curse Chrome to transform the browser into an HTTP proxy. Nice. Developing custom agents and C2 frameworks allows remote execution of JavaScript directly within Chrome's native processes, bypassing security mechanisms such as app-bound encryption. Excellent. Hold on. I did not mean Chief. I meant Chief. Oh, I guess they haven't released it. Sad. I would like to have played with that if they had released it out. But now this gives me new ideas. Ideas I can't even execute on because I'm too damn stacked with projects right now. All right, I need to go take care of something, guys. I'll be right back. back. Guess who's back? Back again. Blaise is back. Tell your friends. Let's see. We've only got about 20 minutes left in the stream, so... Fortunately, I don't think we're going to get through this entire decom arc right here. There we go. Free up the rest of my header space here. It says it's only a 12-minute read, but this scroll bar tells me otherwise. Let's see. So this is from Spectre Ops, and this is from Craig Wright. So TLDR, I'm releasing a decom lateral movement beacon object file that uses Windows Installer Custom Action Server to install and configure the ODBC driver. Ooh, nice. Let's see. So Spectre Ops provided me with the opportunity to research the Windows installer. So in this blog post, we'll discuss how I went about discovering an additional execution primitive that can be used for lateral movement using the Windows Installer Custom Action Server. Before starting, I'm going to briefly lay out the background of COM and the Windows installer. Let's see. COM, or the Component Object Model, is an object-oriented standard that allows developers to interact with other components without needing to understand the inner workings. COM is a language and platform-agnostic system, though it's best known for its use in the Windows operating system. So for an example, a developer could write an encryption and decryption COM server. Application developers want to use the encryption software. They don't need to be cryptography experts. They just need to know which arguments to pass to the COM server's functions. The COM server developer can modify the encryption and decryption routines, but as long as they expose the functions, it retains their original definitions. The application's developers don't need to make any changes to their code. Very cool. It's worth noting that COM servers and clients exist in the same executable, though it seems to be more common for them to be separate. Regardless, COM allows for interprocess communication, which means it has potential for allowing for privilege escalation and lateral movement. COM also can be utilized across machines in what's called DCOM, or distributed COM. COM servers generally support self-registration. The registration of a COM server amounts to the creation of several register keys. Cool. Excellent. So background on the MSI server. So before the days of MSI, developers would make use of the setup API to install applications drivers. The setup API would parse an INF file. Man, I haven't seen INFs in a while. It would move files around, modify registries, and add some logging functionality, but the setup API kind of sucked. It didn't track any of the changes made. It didn't have the ability to recover or roll back from failures, and it didn't have any uninstall functionality. So there was no standard for writing these, and bad setup developers could leave systems in a bad state. Word, that happened all the time back in the day. You uninstall something and it just leaves your system worse off. Let's see. Microsoft developed the Microsoft installer, internally codenamed Darwin, taking a shot at Apple there, to solve a lot of these problems. So a few months after its initial release, in true Microsoft form, they decided to rename it to the Windows installer. God, can Windows ever just stick to a damn name? The new name never really caught on, which is why they use MSI and not WSI extensions. The Darwin team decided to go with the custom database format, because why not, to house the logic of the installations. This continues to cause problems for MSI developers. Let's see, building this custom relational database to store all the setup logic was unnecessary and generated a lot of overhead over the years, especially for those of us who have to create the flippin' MSI files. And that's from 2003, and MSI is still the most common one. So, excuse me. So how does this all relate to COM? So the Windows installer isn't just an installation framework, it's a Windows service that runs as NT Authority system and exposes its functionality through COM interfaces. Microsoft exposes the Windows installer via COM, so the client processes like MSI exec can access the installation functionality that's needed to execute in a privileged context. So in some cases, the installation needs to make changes to the system as a privileged user, which is system, and that's the reason why the Windows installer service exists. So in order to interact with the service, the MSI exec command line utility will instantiate the Windows installer service via COM. The details of the component get passed along to perform the actions that require elevation. Got it. Let's see. So the Windows installer supports many standards, but at a certain point, developers of installers had edge cases that began to request more flexibility. The team at Microsoft added custom actions The custom actions allowed MSI developers to execute scripts, executables, and DLLs embedded inside the MSI, as well as execute shell commands on the computer. So the custom actions are configurable by a bit mask, and it's determined when and whom will execute it. So if the custom action has the MSDI custom action type in script and some other long one in here, option set, the custom action will execute in the context of NT authority system. Nice. The custom action server seems like an obvious target for privilege escalation. All right, let's look at some leaked source and reverse engineering. So knowing that the Windows installer has been around for a while, I decided to take a look at the leaked source code to assist in my reverse engineering. I found 4 interface definition languages, or IDL files, in the leaked source code that confirms or that defines the common interfaces for the Windows installer. The server IDL file defines the interface. The app ID is a service. Yada yada. Okay. So to verify what's going on here, we can actually trigger the start of the service using the following PowerShell. So after executing these commands, you should see MSI exec service running as NT authority system. So it's worth noting this can be triggered as a low priv user. So we set the CLS ID for the COM object, we set the type, and the COM object activator, which is create an instance. So it's great to see that we can start the service, but what if we actually want to interact with the server itself? Well, at this point, we should probably switch to unmanaged code. The reason is that the IMSI server is not a public interface, meaning that Microsoft doesn't really intend for us to use it. So in order to actually use the IMSI server interface, we'll need to define it inside of our code. So it's much less complicated than you actually have this is much less complicated if you actually have the IDL file to use to define the interface. But what if you don't have the IDL file? If you don't have the idle file, what you need to do is identify the interface from some reverse engineering. So we can open the COM server in our favorite compiler or disassembler. COM servers implement this in msi.dll. All COM servers must inherit the IUnknown class, which is defined as a couple of an H result and a couple of ulongs. So we have a query interface, an add reference, and a release. Bobby, I just saw your message. Not now, Chief. I'm in the zone. Let's see. So the query interface function accepts a reference ID, an interface ID, and a pointer to the object, which is modified in the code to return the COM object of the caller. What this means is that we should be able to search for our interface ID and find the implementation of the IMSI server interface. Got it. So after searching, we see 2 query interface functions that match our criteria looking at the implementation of the CMSI server proxy query interface. We see some comparison to the top portion of the IMSI server IID. Cool. We research and cross-reference this. Let's see. So after clicking into the function, we see that almost immediately it calls client call 3. So for those unaware, this means we're looking at the client-side code, which calls into RPC to access the COM server remotely. Oh, I'm always interested in remote access. So going back to our original search results and following the same workflow, we can follow the cross-reference to land in the virtual table for the configuration manager interface. Nice. So this time, clicking into one of the functions, we can see the server-side implementation of the function. Excellent. So at this point, I started renaming and retyping all the variables in the configuration manager interface. So during the process, several interesting functions stood out. I started looking at the Windows installer more and came across a very interesting article titled Forget PSExec, DCOM Upload and Execute Backdoor by Eliran Nissan. Do I know him? Let me see. I don't think I've interacted with him. He hasn't posted anything. Sad. That's probably why I haven't interacted with him. So as I started reading this blog post, I quickly realized I was duplicating work. What a waste of time. So I highly recommend reading the blog post. It details the discovery and the use of custom action servers to perform a file write and execution trigger for lateral movement. So using this method, Eliran? I'm not sure how to say it. Anyway, the one that he laid out, I was able to obtain a pointer to the custom action server interface. Let's see. So the purpose of the custom action server is to execute scripts or executables or DLLs. So I was super interested in the scripts for execution since script execution receives more scrutiny by security products in my experience. So I did notice several functions that were not mentioned in the original blog post, however, which made me think there may be something else here. The function I found particularly interesting were SQL related functions. Oh, well, look at that. SQL install, config driver, remove driver, install translator, remove translator, configure a data source, install driver manager, remove the driver manager, and installer errors. So I started looking at the SQL install driver X functions, and the functions really didn't do much. It checks for the existence of an argument, calls a function to keep the thread alive, then calls it into something else. So on its own, the SQL installer X driver function won't actually execute any code. So after reading the documentation, I noticed that this line that said, so after, after SQL install driver X has been called and the application setup program has copied the driver file, the driver setup DLL must call SQL config driver to set the configuration for the driver. Okay. So the custom action server also exposed a SQL config driver function. Similar to the install driver X function, the config driver function did nothing more than hold the thread open while performing another call. So looking at the documentation, we see that the comment tells us everything we need to know. So the SQL config driver allows an application to call a driver's config driver routine without having to know the name and load the driver specific setup DLL. So a setup program calls this function after the driver setup DLL has been installed. The calling program should be aware that this function might not be available for all drivers. In such case, the calling program should continue without error. Nice. So for a quick proof of concept, knowing that the APIs are being called by the Windows installer, before going through all the trouble of developing a COM client and a custom action server, we can just develop a small application, and we're going to call it ODBC-CP32, or to call those functions. We also need a DLL that exports a function named config driver. Inside the config driver function, we'll make a call message box to verify that it actually was successfully called. Perfect. Message box. Our DLL was loaded. So next we need to write a small executable to call the two SQL functions. Boom. Does that. Does some wonderful C code there. Bam. DLL got loaded. Excellent. So we have now identified a mechanism in the custom action server that can be used to load a DLL. To tie it all together, if we're a member of the administrators group on a remote system and we write a DLL onto the remote system, we can get a pointer to the custom action server interface functions that'll let us trigger the execution of our DLL. So the ODBC actions will execute from the host process MSI exec. In the user context, we're moving laterally too. Modifying the DLL a bit, we can prove this out by having it write some details to a file. So I developed and released a lateral movement beacon object file to perform this call. The BOF takes all wide strings and can be used locally or remotely by the current user or an alternative user if you've got their credentials. Nice. All right, so what do we do here? So we give it a driver name and a DLL path, or a user and password driver name. Excellent. Excellent. I love this. So the example he uses here is it's going to be a remote one. Give it a domain, which is Stromble. We're using domain admin and password to log in. And then the host that he's targeting is going to be DC01. And then our driver name is going to be test driver, and that's going to be loaded in C Windows 10. Okay. Nice. So after executing our lateral movement BOF, we should see a file appear on the desktop with our information. Nice. Excellent. Very cool. Where did he... Let's go look at this real quick. I do like a good lateral movement. Let me start this real quick. I'm going to put this into the red team. Yeah, we'll put that in the red team list. Let's see. So this BOF uses the MSI server over DCOM to install and configure an ODBC driver using the custom action server. So the proof of concept relies on placing a DLL on the remote system. The code for the DLL can be found in... Let's see. He put this in a different... MSI lateral move. What is this repository here? Oh, it was in the same one. I'm an idiot. Right here. Yeah, it's in tree main SQL driver DLL. Okay. Test driver. So we had a write to log. Let's see, log user context. And then we have our DLL main, and then we have our extern statement. Very cool. Neat. What did he say for our defenders here? So the main defense for this he's recommending is registry monitoring. So calls to the SQL install driver X, writes to the registry under, let's see, software ODBC driver, adding a, what is a SACL? I'm trying to remember. Secure ACL? Oh, it's a system access control list. I knew it was an access control. I couldn't remember what the S stood for. Let's see. So adding a SACL to this registry key generates a high fidelity alert whenever a new ODBC driver is installed. I don't have a ton of insight into this, and I don't expect this happens very frequently. Probably not, especially if it's not a server-based system, right? I can't imagine many end-user systems are installing ODBC drivers. That's funny. All right. We did have time to get through that. Cool. I kind of blasted through it, but there was a lot of technical details that I can't provide a ton of insight into. I really need to bone up on my Windows internals. But let's see who's on for InfoSec streams. All right, we have Tanis on, but let's see who else we might be able to raid out to. If over on the Twitch side you've got any raid suggestions, please feel free to shout them out. Let's see who we've got on right now. Let's see, Science is on also. Let's see, Moo Hoodies is on. Let's see. Don't necessarily want to go raid Tay because it's not a good night for a DJ. Computer Booter is also on. Yeah, Tanis is on. Got a couple others. Actually, you know what? Let's go right over to Computer Booter. Because he's always doing really interesting hardware hacks. Trying to fix stuff. I think he's working on a Game Boy. Nice. Alright. Yep, unfortunately, guys, that is where I've got to wrap it up. I've got some stuff I need to work on here after the stream. Everyone, hope you have had a wonderful hump day. Tomorrow is still crushing it mode. Get after it. I want y'all to keep finishing up this week strong. Do not go weakly into the end of the week. Go strongly into the end of the week. Hey, Jesse, what's up, man? Everyone, yeah, that's pretty much it for tonight. We had some really cool hacker news, a little bit of musings about cybersecurity and offensive tooling and whether or not it's ethical. I truly believe it is, because if you don't know what the attackers are doing, you will never be able to defend against it. And that's just my 2 cents on it. Everyone, I hope you'll have an absolutely fantastic rest of your week. Saturday, we'll pick back up on Hackbot. We're going to redo the browser agent and get it working. And then I think the exploitation agent will hit its milestone after that. 99, love you long time, Gumby. Everyone, I want y'all to continue having an absolutely amazing week. Continue to crush it. And I want y'all to remember one very important thing, and that is, I love you. Peace. I take that back. One more thing. Drop a bunch of Hack the Planets in on Computer Booter when we get in there. Take care, everyone.